Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Jeff Rennell. I'm one of the co-hosts of ETalk.TV. Today, I'm doing this one solo without my buddy Scott. He's stuck in California somewhere, and I guess without service. So tonight, we have a wonderful guest with us. He's a great friend of mine. His name is Reverend John Polk. He is a Reiki master, correct?
Yes.
He is an experiencer, an author of two wonderful books, The Beings, right here, The Beings That Visitation at the UFO Conference. Also, Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien, is two of his books. He's also a professional speaker and speaks around the United States and more. Have you been across country or?
Yeah, I'm constantly traveling cross country, emceeing UFO conferences, speaking at UFO conferences. I have a sound system, as I did entertainment in Orlando for 25 years. And that was a big selling point for me to be able to get into the speaking and MC circuit at UFO conferences. I have my own sound system. How cool was that? Microphones, multiple cordless microphones, two big speakers. I can do karaoke. Also, I can interface computers through my sound system also, which is great.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you had the tools to get yourself out there on the market, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. So why don't you tell the listening audience a little bit more about yourself then that I've missed?
Okay. I'm a international metaphysical minister out of the University of Sedona. I have a bachelor's in metaphysics also. All done online through the University of Sedona's International Metaphysical Ministry program that you can take online. They say it can take 6 months. I took a year. You can take your time and do it any way that you want. So I did that. And in the same year, I became a Reiki master instructor, also in Macau, Yusui Reiki. I've authored 2 books. And you can find The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, and Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien at my website, johnpolkmedia.com. I like to work with experiencers. I like to have people open a dialogue with me through social media. And once we build a certain rapport, if they're open to talking to me on the phone, it's nothing I charge for. I just like to do it. I like to help people and let them know and understand that they're not alone and they're not unique either. Is that this is a worldwide global phenomenon. And I'm a consultant for Dr. Edgar Mitchell's Free Foundation, which is the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And they've conducted this longitudinal qualitative study, which is the most comprehensive in world history about abduction and being an experiencer. And what they've concluded through years of research and thousands of surveys now in multiple languages is that most experiencers have positive experiences. But when you watch movies and, even on the media, popular media, anything that is covered, it's usually very negative, but that's not the reality. Most of it is very positive.
Yeah, and I want to get into that with you and ask you about that because I'm really curious about that. I definitely know media tries to sell the fear part of it. That's what I've heard is that it's more of a positive end. I do got a quick question for you, though, because just what you were talking about there, so since there's like an awakening of this ascension and everything like that, is that making people a little bit more open to come out and speak about their abduction experience? Are people still a little nervous to come out and ask, for help?
I think that more than ever before, people are becoming more comfortable talking about it. Even 5-10 years ago, it was still taboo. It was something very risque. You didn't want to attach your name to it if you had a big position in some kind of political setting, or just, you could lose your job over talking about it. And I've even heard of especially women potentially losing their children in custody battles because of their beliefs in extraterrestrials.
Never thought about that, but yeah, I guess that's true, huh?
Yeah, and so we were talking about it earlier. You called me Marcus Polk, and I'm like, it's not your fault because that's my handle on Facebook. I've got my John Polk, which is for my family, but my Marcus Polk is for UFO paranormal. And why? Because I was afraid of losing my entertainment accounts out by Walt Disney World in Central Florida. If my bosses found out that I wrote a book called Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien, I would probably lose my entertainment contracts. So that's
Yeah.
why I, prefer the anonymity of that on Facebook, Marcus Polk. Nobody puts it together. All my friends are telling me one day somebody will put it together. And I'm like, when that one day comes, then I just, I face it. And if I lose work because of it, then I gain karma in the back end too.
I mean, if they're going to look that hard at that point, then they want to. So.
Yeah, I agree. So, I don't judge them for, thinking I'm going to go to hell because I had premarital sex, so God actually does forgive. So it's okay.
As long as you forgive.
Hey, I forgave myself many times over.
Yeah. Awesome. So, like I said earlier, John's a good friend of mine, Reverend Paul here. We actually met a little over a year ago at the 5D event in Las Vegas. I was helping out a friend of mine with the booth, and he was next to our booth with Brad Olson and him selling books. And I got a chance to sit down for 2 days and talk to him and get to know him and Brad as well. And it, truly it changed my life getting to know you guys. And the week we had that week was absolutely amazing as well too. It was just like one adventure after another, from the next day to the next. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun for this first year.
Yeah, and it was very not awkward meeting you, but awkward the timing because it was right after the shooting. It was right after the shooting, and we were there, and you have to think that it affected the attendance of that conference. A lot of the vendors didn't do very well, which was, always unfortunate because without the vendors, you can't have these events. You got to sponsor it somehow. And they're one of many different sponsors, but they're incredibly important. And maybe a third to more than a third of the vendors are speakers also. So you want everybody to do well. But I mean, right after the shooting, that's when the conference was. But when you're in conferences like that, the best part is you get to hang out with all the speakers and get to know them personally. And we did. So that was incredibly cool.
Yeah. And we're going to actually probably have David Farmer on here next month so he can talk about the 5D event coming back to Vegas here in March. I believe it's the late March he's coming back to do the 5D event, which is really awesome. Because, it was kind of slow right after the shooting and everything. I think the event could have been a lot better. As far as the attendance it goes.
Yeah, I mean, all the speakers did a masterful job as you would expect them to do. I watched a number of the speakers, and I know most of them anyway, which was really great. And it was interesting. A couple things were starting to come out that really weren't spoken about too much at other conferences, but the benefits of CBD oils, cannabinoids, the medicinal properties and uses of marijuana. It's always been out there, this information. It's not new, but speakers in our field are starting to talk about it and incorporate it into their own modalities and disciplines, which I think is great. There was a number of speakers who were talking about how if you do it properly with the right strains, and it has to be the right strain, but you can cure certain forms of cancer and diabetes and other things that are just killing people, and that the drugs that the farms are giving the doctors to give to us really just slow down the whole process of us dying so that they can just make money off of us slowly.
Mr. Blue on the chat room's putting up Christmas trees there on the chat room for us. So,
Mr. Blue.
So yeah, and you're 100% right there because of the stuff that I've studied and learned off of cannabis and everything. When it comes to the terps, I mean that is just absolutely amazing. They're just like herbs. So when you understand the terps, and once they actually label, and that's what I love about it actually becoming legal the way it has been, is because it's really opened it up to understand it. Because I think me and you both have been around it for most of our life and stuff, and now that it's become legal, I've learned way more. I mean, 100 times more than I ever knew before. And now understanding terps, I'm telling you, if they label the package right, when you have some type of ailment, you'll be able to go there, flip that package around, look at the different types of terps that it has on there, and be able to choose which one is beneficial for you, which one is an anti-inflammatory, which one is high on antioxidants. And so you're right. It's going to be absolutely amazing when they really understand what this plant is.
Well, and you're the first person that used the term terps in front of me, and I didn't totally understand it. I do now. But can you explain what terps means?
It's terpenes. I don't know how. I'm sure there's a more formal name for it, but the terps, basically, the terpenes are they are like an herb within the plant, and so they have limonene. I'm kind of getting over a cold, so I'm having a hard time saying words here right now. But limonene is like lemon, and so it has the same benefits as lemon would have for you. They have the pineol, which is pine, and so pine is good for vitamin C. And so there's so many different things that it has and that it's beneficial for you, that it's just amazing. I mean, you seriously will be able to look at it and say, here, I have this ailment, and this ailment. This is strong for this, this, and this. This is the one I need.
Exactly, but you have to know, which ones to take and for what reasons. Gigi, we all know my good friend Gigi, our good friend Gigi. He was just asking me if we're doing the show, and he's asking if we can tweet out a link that he could find.
Actually, if you just tell him I linked him on Twitter. If he goes into his direct messages, I send him a link there.
Okay.
So he just register in like you did.
All right, sounds good.
That way you can also get on screen as well with us.
Well, I send this real quick.
Oh. So yeah, medical marijuana is just really taking it to a new level and a new place for us, that we should have had this a long time ago, because this, cannabis has been in every medical bag before the 1920s. I don't know the exact dates and stuff like that, but once the pharmaceutical companies started to realize that they're losing a lot of money because of all the benefits that cannabis has, that them and the lumber company started to create the campaign to go against cannabis. And
the Rockefellers found out about it also and got rid of hemp, more specifically hemp, and replaced it with plastics. There's so much more money in plastics.
If they would have only thought about how beneficial it was and how much money they could have made off of this, and just started investing into this right off the bat, instead of being where we're at now. But
so in the chat room, you ET smoke cannabis.
You got that, all right.
Yes, they do, actually.
Yeah, I would say, who do you think left it here for us?
Yes, it was a gift from the gods, if you will.
Well, I honestly believe that, because it's the only thing in nature that has a cannabinoid system that matches up just like our cannabinoid system. And that's why it is so beneficial for us, because the cannabinoid system is designed to help the immune system. And so when we get weakened by all our emotional stress and everything, the negative foods we eat, all the stress, constant running around in life and everything, that weakens all of our cannabinoid systems. And then so when we start to partake in some nice cannabis, then that helps strengthen our cannabinoid system again and gives us strength.
It was interesting at the Stargate to the Cosmos conference, in which I was one of a few MCs and speakers. I ran into Michael Lee Hill. Do you know who Michael Lee Hill is?
No, I can't say I do.
He became famous for his UFO footage over Lake Erie. He used to live in the Cleveland area for a long time, and now he lives in Florida, out in the Tampa area. But he spent all this money on these really expensive cameras and captured some of the best UFO footage besides James Gilliland that I've ever seen in my life. And he will tell you that he's been an Anunnaki contactee since 2007, and that the Anunnaki snort monoatomic gold. So the ETs like to indulge themselves, which I found that kind of funny and interesting at the same time. They snort gold dust. Okay.
I think it's just conscious nature, because we get used to a certain realm, or whatever you want to say, within the conscious focus, and sometimes we want to enlighten that into a different realm. And so, yeah, I think all beings, well, it's proven out there. We know even insects and animals, they look to get drunk. And I was at my brother's house in Utah working about a couple months ago, when it was still nice and warm, and all the wasps there were eating the little small crab apples and getting drunk off their butt. I mean, it was hilarious. I've never seen that before in my life. Yeah, I mean, you're normally scared of these big yellow wasps, especially me from Vegas. I don't have to deal with them that much, but, they're all over the place there, but they're actually stumbling on the sidewalk because they can't fly. So they're trying to walk and stumble all over the place. It's hilarious.
It's also interesting that in the Old Testament of the Bible, that the high priests that would communicate with Yahweh, or the biblical alien, in my estimation, number one, they were drinking wine all day long. They didn't have water in the desert. They drank wine. So they'd be drinking wine all day long. And then they would do opioids. Basically, they would inhale frankincense, which is an opiate. And so they would get drunk and get high, and then they would go talk to God through the Ark of the Covenant. And about 1/3 of the time, they would end up dead. So
some things just never change, man.
Like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. And then in the Pueblo cultures all throughout the desert Southwest, almost all of their ceremonies to deify the gods and to call them in, there was some kind of peyote ritual or something to, for them to elevate to a higher dimension, to be able to communicate with the gods. Now, I personally know that you don't have to do that to communicate with the gods, but you got to think the extraterrestrials taught them to do it that way. They taught them certain chants, certain dances, and the ceremonies were all about the gods and bringing the gods back down to earth, and the glorification of the gods for bringing them knowledge and wisdom and agriculture and art and song and dance also. So the ETs set up these cultures to do drugs to connect with them, which, if you think about it, that's kind of crazy to wrap your head around.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's crazy to wrap the head around, because, especially, again, looking at it spiritually and consciously, it's a tool to help you open and expand your consciousness into a new realm. And once you've experienced that, then that allows that access back into that gateway, I believe, if you know how to release that consciousness into that sense again. Does that make sense?
It does. Not to quote Guns N' Roses, but use your illusion. I mean, if you're gonna do something that is way excessive, if you're gonna do it, what are you gonna do with it? Are you just doing it to just lay around the house and be drunk and high, or are you doing it to contact some kind of metaphysical, spiritual realm? The choice is yours.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm just texting Gigi here. Is it Gigi's in the house here in the chat room?
Oh, and I was telling you, I stayed with Gigi in Southern California. I don't know, a month and a half ago. I stayed with him for like 10, 12 days, and we had a great time hanging out. And one night we're walking up to the place to get some hamburgers, and we're walking back, and or a UFO may have been 75 to 100 feet over our heads, right over our heads, and then just disappeared. It was a total trip. But this has been happening to me a lot, where friends of mine, I hang out with them. If they're open-minded to ETs and UFOs, often something will happen. It doesn't always happen the first time. Often it doesn't happen. If we plan it, it usually doesn't happen as planned, but it almost always happens. And then Joe Roop, the producer of my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, I visited him in his studios in, October of this year. And he had never used night vision goggles before. And he'd never really seen a UFO before. And I'm staying the night with him. We're going to do a couple shows. And we actually had some incredible guests. We had Bill Burns from UFO Magazine and UFO Hunters, I believe, on the History Channel. And then Nick Pope, the former Department of Defense, UFO investigator. Those were our two interviews. But just prior to that, he's like, hey, man, if we go outside, do you think we'll see anything? And I'm like, I can't guarantee it. It doesn't always work. And we walked outside and boom, we saw 4 UFOs right off the bat, me, him, and his 13-year-old son. So these kind of things have been happening to me more and more and more with witnesses. And I think the witnesses are more important than any photography or videography that you can get, because the debunkers are, no matter what you do, no matter what kind of video, what kind of picture you put out there, they're just going to try and shoot it down and say that it was something that was fabricated or manipulated in a studio. So the witnesses are more important than anything. And when we were at Area 51, actually more specifically Rachel, Nevada, after the 5D conference in October of last year, 2 years ago now, we all saw something out there by the Nellis Air Force Base.
Yeah, actually, you're talking about night vision. I think you handed me Eric's goggles that night, and that was the first time I've ever used anything like that. And sure enough, as soon as I put it to my up into my eyes and I started to look out, there's this little orb on the side. And when I first saw it, I thought it was just a dust particle because I've never used the night vision before.
Oh, right.
That little dust particle traveled from far right, and it traveled like in the northeast direction. It was about south. It was south of us, and it traveled. And I don't know if you remember that house that was east, that house that sat out there all by itself.
Well, the big black mailbox, right?
Well, no, the mailbox is way beyond that. But there was a house that just sat out there by itself east of us, and it had its porch light on. And so I was like, there's no way I can be looking into these night goggles right away, and all of a sudden there's an orb there. So I automatically thought it was a bug, and I just, I left that in my thoughts, is that it's a bug. But it traveled all the way over where these, you remember the trailers that were off to our right if we were looking out east direction? It traveled from there all the way across in front of that house, which to me I would want to say is probably at least a quarter mile away from where we were at. I'm not sure. I'm not great with distance like that, but I would say probably that far because it was, quite a ways away. But it floated all the way out to in front of that house. And I turned around going, hey, you guys see that? And then I'm thinking, well, they don't got goggles, so they obviously can't see what I'm seeing. So I turned around and looked. And at that point, it did like this loop and flew over that house and just shot right out into the desert. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't want to believe what I'm seeing and stuff. So I just thinking it's a bug. But, days later, I'm really contemplating and I'm like, there's no way that could be a bug. The distance it traveled, how it traveled, and just the size of it too inside the goggles. So I'm pretty convinced I saw some type of orb out there floating around that night. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why, people go out there obviously and go camping. And what was really interesting is I believe it was like 2:32 in the morning, and we all saw something, or at least we thought we saw something, all of us. And then everybody's like, okay, I got my fix. I'm going to bed. And I'm like, I'm staying up. I'm staying up.
We were all contemplating going to bed at that moment. And if I remember correctly, we all stood up at the same time. And the next thing we were like, oh, what was that? And
Yeah.
yeah, there obviously it was something, and yeah, to me that one was really different than all the meteors we saw that night. To me, it more shot out towards space instead of coming across in towards the Earth atmosphere like a meteor would.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, and so yeah, that one was really weird. And so to me, I would feel maybe something took off out of Area 51. Who knows? I don't want to say that. I don't want to speculate, but it was definitely in that vicinity and went out in the direction of space.
And so remember, we get there, and you and I and Scott, we were talking, and we passed the turn. We passed the turn by 23 miles, whatever. We turn around, we figured out where we were going. We get there, and Brad Olson and Eric were already there, and they had a fire built and everything. And shortly thereafter, these black vehicles, remember these black vehicles would pull up maybe 75 feet away from us and just park and just park and just stare at us. Nobody got in or out of the vehicle, but they made their presence very well known. And they would sit there for like 10 minutes or more, and then they would leave. And then, I don't know, maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes later, same thing. And so when you guys went to bed at 2:30, I decided I was going to stay up. And so when you guys went to bed, those vehicles got closer and closer and closer and closer, and it started to scare me. I was starting to freak out. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bed. And the next thing I know, I black out. And then I wake up, and what I do remember, the last thing I remember is seeing the fire. And when I woke up, the fire was completely out. So I have no idea how much time I lost at all. And when I woke up the next morning, there was blood all over my pillow. I'm assuming they gave me an implant in my nose, which is typically what happens. Now, who were they? What happened? Why was my nose bleeding? I can't answer any of those questions. But one thing I do remember is I could feel them shooting ELF waves and psychotronics, radionics kind of waves. I could feel them shooting waves at us. I could feel a boom mic on us, listening to every word that we were saying. They were doing some kind of diagnostics and surveillance on us. There was no reason for them to be there unless they were checking us out. And it was clear that they were checking us out. We weren't doing anything wrong, but they were certainly overly curious about what we were doing. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think they're on top of things. I mean, they have to know who's coming out there and stuff. I believe there's still stuff going on at Area 51, but it's just S4, whatever the secret part is now. But I just think it's way underground now. There's nothing near the surface that's going to give off any type of idea of what they're working on for sure, unless they want us to see that.
Well, and you said back in the day, because you've grown up in Vegas, you said that you would see military vehicles driving around. And you're like, in the last 5-10 years, you don't even really see them anymore. I mean, you'll see them some, but nothing like you used to. And you know that the military presence has grown there. So it's like, where did they go? And that was your estimation, that they went underground. And you got to figure they have this monster labyrinth of tunnels and caves and perhaps maglev systems that travel across the country. You got to know that they got a whole network down there, bases, military bases, ET bases, joint military and ET bases, where they're engineering craft, perhaps engineering human alien hybrids and whatever else they're doing. There's tons of activity subterranean all throughout that area.
Oh yeah, there's so much they could do underground that, yeah. They could create their own cities, and those people even have no idea that we're above ground. I mean, you just never know what they can do.
Right.
Yeah. So, since we're getting into some good stuff now, let's go and talk about your experiences and stuff and what got you to where you're at today. You have actually had experiences with extraterrestrials. You talk about it in your book, Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien. And so why don't you go ahead and open up and tell us a little bit about how did this happen? When did you realize this? Because you didn't really know when it was happening. It was later on when you actually went and had some past life regression. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had been looking for somebody to do a regression on me for many, many years. And I had found people that, did it for a living over 20 years, very successful, very celebrated and decorated in their field, could not do it to me, period. Couldn't do it to me at all. And then in 2017, I sold my house. Hurricane Irma wrecked it right after that. So I cashed out. Hurricane Irma wrecks my house. My aunt and uncle in Sedona, Arizona, of all places, said, "Can you babysit our house for 8 months?" I'm like, "Do you want me to, help out with the bills?" Or like, no. Just take care of the house. Just make sure it's clean when we get back. I'm like, yes. So I move out to Arizona, move to Sedona specifically. I move into this house, and you'd been by that house yourself when we were out there. And I meet this little old lady named Thea Ivy, and she's the most powerful spiritual healer I've ever met in my life by far. And also she was the first person to successfully regress me also. And what came out in the regression was my mom, when she was pregnant with me and my brother, were 2.5 years apart. We were both in the womb for over 10 months, which is unheard of. If that happened today, they would induce the labor. They wouldn't let it go that long. But anyway, so in the regression, it came out that when my mom was pregnant, they took her and added DNA to me. And it was the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki either tampered with my DNA or added DNA to me. And then that's what took me so long to incubate and neurologically cook, basically. And I believe that that's a huge reason. Now, I know that that's a huge reason why I get abducted a lot, is because these different species of extraterrestrials want to do research for their own purposes on human alien hybrids. Now, we're all hybrids. That's for sure. All of us, some more than others. But it came out through regression that I was abducted while my mom was pregnant with me. And then every other year, when I was 1, then when I was 3, 5, 7, 9, all the way up until sometime in my, when I was 23 years old. It stopped until I was, I think, 29 or 31, and then it started again. And what I believe they were doing is they were taking out old implants and putting in new implants. That all came out during the regression. And once I finally started to hear this, then things started to make more sense than ever before.
So let me ask you, when you were younger and you really didn't realize that any of this was going on.
I didn't.
Especially now that you can kind of look back, and I know from what you do for a living too, about emotional work and stuff. Can you look back and see, was there emotional scars that you were dealing with without even realizing it?
I would have to think so. Yeah, I would definitely have to think so. But what was happening when I was 5 years old, I could see ghosts. And so could my mom also. So
and
imagine.
How did she react with you to that? Because some people's parents will be accepting and not, even if they do see it.
My mom actually helped me to develop it. Most parents, and you can't really blame them for it, but most parents would tell you, that's your imaginary friend, or you're making it up. You're a child. You're just very imaginative and creative thinker. You're manifesting these little, ghouls and goblins that don't really exist. My mom did the exact opposite. She helped me to groom this kind of ability into something that you need to take totally seriously, but that you can use to help yourself, but more importantly, you can use to help other people. And so I did. And when I was 5 years old, I started to see ghosts, and it just kept ramping up more and more after that. When I was 13, I knew something was going on. That's when I was old enough to consciously go, wow, something is really going on. There was something I would see in the mirror, and I would call it you. I'd look in the mirror, and I didn't know what to call it, but it was you. I called it you. Look in the mirror, and you was there. And I believe that was another aspect of myself. I can't exactly be sure, but there was definitely something there.
I'm curious. Can Can you describe that? I mean, what do you mean by you? I mean, I think I understand, but it makes me curious. Does you see that as a higher perspective of yourself, your higher self in a sense, that you're seeing that reflection? Is that what you're talking about, or?
That could be a way to interpret it. All I knew is that it was a more evolved aspect of myself, or some kind of more evolved sentient being. I wasn't exactly sure. I was a teenager, and I was just starting to figure it out. I just knew that there was something there, and I would have communication with this you. I didn't know what to call it, so I'd look in the mirror and just go you, and it was weird, man. You would set me up with certain time anomalies that played into really good things happening to me, or me avoiding incredible danger and trouble also.
So you're guided in a lot of ways as well too, huh?
Yeah, I mean, so I used to work as a medium in Sedona while I was there, and people come into my office, and one of the questions I would ask them, I would say, who is one of your most powerful guardian angels, if not the most powerful guardian angel that you have? And most people didn't know what to say. And I would say, it's you. You are your most powerful guardian angel. Our higher self knows all about our third dimensional self. Our third dimensional self doesn't know really anything about our higher or our Godhead. We just don't know anything about it because we're not taught. We're not taught that in school. In Eastern cultures, they are taught that, but we're not. And so it's something very foreign to us. But yes, so aspects, it's a good word to use. So we all have multiple aspects to ourselves. The name of my show is Quantum Hologram Matrix, but it goes back to Dr. Rudy Schild's quantum hologram theory, which postulates that we all live in a multi-dimensional existence through different aspects of ourself. So this is something that I would also teach in my studio there in Sedona. And it turned into a download, which turned into a poem. And the beginning of the poem is, remotely view you through the higher eyes that are reviewing you. Remotely view you through the higher eyes that are reviewing you. So imagine, on Earth, I'm a third dimensional earthling. Let's say in the fifth, I'm a Pleiadian. Let's say in the seventh, I'm an Arcturian. Let's say in the ninth, I'm an Andromedan. So my Andromeda self, my Arcturian self, my Pleiadian self knows all about me, but I don't know very much about them. So I try to remotely view me through their eyes. So now I'm the seventh dimensional Arcturian looking down, listening to you and I talk on this show right now. But now I'm the eyes up in the ceiling watching us in the third dimension from a higher dimension. And that was something that I taught and that I would teach in my workshops that I did at the center.
Beautiful. No, I love that, because in the training that I've done and stuff like that, it made me open and realize too. It's like, and I don't know, maybe I'm off here, but to me, what it reminds me of is just the way I looked at things. Is I started to realize that, at least I do. I don't know if everybody else does. I think we do. But when I would judge myself, I would judge myself from this higher perspective. And I'm always like, well, who is this person that I keep judging myself against? And, because the person I'm judging myself against in my mind is way better than I could have been in my life. And so I started to sit down and think one day, who is that higher perspective that I keep judging myself against? Does this make sense at all?
Yeah.
And it's realizing and it's understanding that, hey, if I'm judging myself from there, how can I just actually come from that perspective and bring that energy into me and actually live from that perspective instead of always putting that judgment there? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it fits perfectly into what I was just saying. In my mind, that's the way I interpret it. So yeah, absolutely. We are not just third dimensional beings. And through reincarnation, we're not only going to reincarnate as humans, we're going to reincarnate as Pleiadians, as Arcturians, as Draco Reptilians. We're going to reincarnate. We're not going to just come back as white Anglo-Saxon men. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think we come back as what the spirit needs to keep evolving and expanding in the right way. So if we need to come back as a being like that, or if we have to come back as a cockroach, whatever it might be, I think it's the truth, though. I think whatever the spirit desires is what we're going to do. It isn't going to matter to the spirit, because the spirit is just all evolving and all loving and all of that, the aspect of learning, I think.
I agree. So let's say you don't like black people or you don't like homosexuals. Well, guess what? You're probably going to come back as one. if you beat women, well, guess what? You're probably going to come back as a woman who will get her face beaten in, just because the yin and the yang. There is a balance. Yeah. So what you put out there is going to come back to you good, and I don't like to use negative terms, so good and less than good.
Well, yeah, it's all. The negative experience is good if you're open to learn from it, I believe.
I agree completely. Yes.
Yeah, you're only batting your head against the wall when you're so ignorant that you're not choosing to learn from the negative experience that you're going through. When you open up and say, what is this experience teaching me? Then that allows that enlightened being to start to evolve and come to the next step, is always my look at it.
I agree completely.
So, hold on, quick text here. Out to Tanglefoot, thanks for stopping by. Back to, I think we got to when you're about 17 years old and stuff like that. And so you're understanding and starting to understand things from there. Is that where we left off with you?
Well, when I was 13, it was pretty clear that I could see ghosts. I mean, when I was 5, I understood it, but I really didn't. You know what I'm saying? I was still very much a child. As I became a teenager, I was able to decipher that there was 2 different consciousnesses communicating with one another. Okay. And then when I was 15, I was either 15 or 16. That's the first abduction that I could honestly remember. My parents, we moved to this incredible condominium on the ocean in Daytona, and it was hard to go to school. I mean, I could sit up in my bed and look at the waves and decide if I was going to skip school or not. And this one night, unusual to look out at the ocean, which I did every single day, every single night, and see the moon reflecting off of the ocean. Incredibly beautiful, especially when there was a full moon. But this one night, this was not the moon. This was clearly not the moon. At first, it looked like it was, but then it was too low, and it was getting closer and closer and closer to the condo. The next thing you know, I black out, and then I wake up, and I see 3 grays outside the sliding glass door. And they kind of press their head up against the glass like children in a zoo looking at a lion or a tiger. And then the next thing I know, they traverse their bodies and were inside the room. They walk up next to my bed. There's 3 grays. One in the middle was slightly taller than the other 2. I make eye contact with it, and next thing you know, I black out. And this is very, very common where, if you can even remember that much, you usually don't remember anything after that. And that's what happened to me. Next thing I know, I wake up. It's the next morning. I wasn't sure what happened. I had pain in my genitals and in my backside. And that pain persisted for maybe a day or more. And then the pain went away, and I kind of just wrote it off as a dream. And as I got older, I started to see like movie clips of what happened. And the movie clips turned into like a movie montage or a trailer for a movie. And this happened in my 30s, and I started to just remember more and more and more and more of it. And that's when I wanted to start getting the regressions done in my 30s. It must have taken me 10 years to find somebody that was able to actually do a successful regression on me. But the number one reason I believe it took so long is because I was not ready. My soul wasn't mature enough or ready at the time when I wanted it to happen. And so I dealt with a lot of frustration over it. I wanted answers. I knew the answers would all come from within, but I couldn't find anybody that was able to crack open the code until I moved to Sedona. And that one little old lady who I will love her for the rest of my life. And when I was telling you about getting implants and going through a lot of excessive bleeding, she healed me. I thought I was going to have to go to a hospital without medical insurance and get that fixed. But Thea Ivy, if anybody wants her information, she lives in Sedona. She lives and works there. That's all that she does. Regressions and spiritual healing. She's the most powerful spiritual healer I've ever met in my life by far.
Sweet. That's awesome. And so let me ask you this then. When you were younger and you started, when you were younger and you started to realize that there was like two different dimensions, universes. I forget exactly how you put it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious, how does somebody at that age start to deal with that? And did that make it hard for you at that age, or was it just like, it's just second nature, it's just what it is?
I absolutely loved it. And I started to write poetry. And, I'll go back and read the poetry I wrote when I was 16, 17, 18, and 19 years old. And for the very most part, the majority of the poetry was about me navigating and or learning how to navigate the astral plane and coming across entities that I could communicate with. So I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And my mom was giving me books on how to develop your psychic abilities. She had a library of her own full of, ancient Egypt and stuff like that. But a big part of it was spiritual healing and how to develop your psychic abilities. And so I started reading those books, and they helped to expand my soul exponentially. That's for sure.
Sweet. Sorry, I was just reading one of the chats there. Hey, since we've been talking, Scott's got on here, and we also have Gigi here. You want to bring them in as well, too?
Yeah, you know what? I need to plug in my computer because my battery's going to die. So go ahead, bring them in. It'll just take me a second to plug it into the wall.
Okay, you need to take a break more than that, or just?
No, just okay. I just need to plug a plug in the wall and plug it into my computer.
All right, sweet. Thanks. Everybody, you're listening to ETalk.TV. We're here with Reverend John Polk. We had a few technical difficulties getting this show off the road, so we're just kind of on a basic green screen tonight. So we're running with no commercials, no interruptions, except for this here. So we're going to bring on the other co-host, my buddy Scott Carmanis, if he is ready to come on. And we'll also go out and bring in Gigi from The Shift Happens if he's available as well too. So let's see what's going on here. All right. Oh, I see what we're doing here. Oops. All right, hold on, people. Who do we got with us now? Hey, what's happening?
Hey, what's happening, guys?
Not much. We can hear you. Let's see if I can bring on Scott as well.
GG, how's it going, man?
What's happening, brother?
Hey, how long are you going to stay in Fallbrook? Do you know?
That's a great question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound all right.
Perfect.
Right. Yeah, our lease is up at the end of February, and don't quite know. I'm either going to move to North Hollywood or I'm going to move to Oceanside proper. Well, one of those two. And Cortana doesn't know what she's going to do. might do either one of those two things, or she might actually move back to Washington.
Well, because I'm going to be relocating out to Southern California.
Yeah.
I don't know, within the next month or so. Anyway, just seeing if you might need somebody to share a place with, possibly.
Yeah. So. You mean like you stay here or me stay with you?
I don't know. All I know is I'm going out to Southern California, and I'm going out there, and but that whole thing isn't going to happen immediately. So I'll either stay in an Airbnb or stay with friends until I do that.
You know, I found the best spot. Well, it's in Hollywood, actually. It's kind of far away. But it's like the cheapest place that you could actually stay. Like the perfect kind of holdover spot. And it's like in the middle of Hollywood. But, that's too far, though. That's not going to work for you. But I will tell you this. Either in March or in August, a buddy of mine, he's that Special Ops Marines guy I was telling you about, like best friend that I grew up with, and
you did tell me about him. Yeah,
he's getting a new house sometime this year, and I'm probably going to get a room. You know, it's going to be a nice place, and he's going to hook it up. You can definitely get a room there whenever we figure that out. But I'm kind of we don't know yet. We'll see. I'm just kind of testing the winds. What happens here? But
I'll follow up with you in the next couple of weeks. How about that?
Right on. So I guess you're in Florida right now?
I'm at my dad's condo in Jacksonville, Florida.
Is it that same condo where you had that encounter with through the glass door?
No, that was in Daytona Beach, which is about an hour south of here, where I'm at now.
That's too bad. Anyway, we could have had you take you to the screen door and everything.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Oh man, that condo was screaming for abduction. I mean, it was. So is this one here. There's tons of military. Anyway, I saw some stuff the other night. I saw some drones checking me out on the balcony like at 3 a.m. So very common. Happens to me quite a bit. They're basically doing surveillance on me.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Hey, I got a question here from one of the listeners here. Are some more likely to get abducted than others? Is there something they look for?
It's a good question. I should bring that up.
Yeah, family lines, family bloodlines. So I know it goes through my mother's side of the family. Her brother, my mom was the oldest of 9 in an Italian Sicilian family. And I was telling you earlier on the show, when my mom was pregnant with me and my brother, we both got abducted while my mom was pregnant with us. And where I could see ghosts when I was 5 years old, my brother was a champion weightlifter and scored higher than anybody in a university's history of scoring on tests. So we both got different traits out of it, completely opposite traits, but we both got different traits out of it. But not always, but very often it goes in family bloodlines. So it happened to my mother, and then my uncle, my mom's brother, he slept in a room with 2 or 3 other brothers, and it was not unusual between the ages of 4 and 8 years old for him to come knocking on the door at 5 a.m. And my grandfather would spank him. Thought he was sneaking out of the house. But never once in that 4-year period did any of my uncles or his brothers who lived in the same house, sleeping in the same room, nobody ever woke up, ever. Which means that the ETs put the whole family under what I call alien anesthesia. They didn't want them to catch him, drifting through the window into a spacecraft or whatever was happening to him. And it's interesting, but he will not talk about it whatsoever. But it did go on for about 5 years when he was a child between 4 and 8 years old. And they tried to catch him. They tried to catch him doing it. They could never catch him doing it. So he wasn't sneaking out of the house. That's for sure. He was being removed from the house.
Right. So abductions, because this is one thing I wanted to ask you too. Do abductions happen when you're in the room with other people, or is it only when you're alone?
They absolutely can happen when you're in the room with other people. So September of 2017, I was the MC of a UFO conference in Sedona, and James Gilland was the keynote speaker, and he was staying at my uncle's house with me, and that's the house I was talking about earlier, and Eric had Awakening Man was in the house also at the same time, and I got taken by a bunch of reptilians, and James Gilland knew about it. After he left, the day after he left, he texted me and said, "Hey, I just want you to know you got abducted by reptilians." And that morning before I got his text, something tells me to go outside at like 5 in the morning. I go outside at 5 in the morning. There's a UFO clear as day right over the house. I take pictures of it. I took videos of it. It allowed me to take pictures and videos of it, almost as if it was rubbing my nose in it, really. And then I find out after the fact that there is a huge MyLab presence in Sedona, and that the actual reptilians are the ones that are the MyLab operatives. And when I first started talking about this, people didn't know how to receive it. And then people like Melinda Leslie, who owns UFOsightingtours.com in Sedona. If you don't see a UFO, you get your money back, put it that way. She's given one person their money back in like 5 years, whatever. She had a similar experience. Misha Johnston, who lives in Vegas, somewhere halfway close to you, Jeff, she got abducted by the reptilian MyLabs in Sedona. Tana Newberry, same thing happened to her also. Kathy Martin, who co-authors books with Stanton Friedman, okay? She's done extensive research on this. So I had all these people coming out of the woodwork basically vetting me and letting me know that, whether you're right or not about it, it's a real phenomenon, and it's happening in Sedona. And so to answer your question, Eric was in the house. And I said, "Eric, get this, man. There was 5 reptilians in the house while I was getting abducted, and he had these weird freak dreams that only he could really explain to you. And he thought they were dreams, but they weren't dreams, whatever happened to him."
So if we're hanging out and stuff like that, I don't have to worry about getting sucked into a ship late at night, right?
Only if we're in Sedona.
Only if you're hanging out with John. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm wondering about, because we hang out quite a bit. So, but that's okay, man. I enjoy the experience. So, I don't know if I'd enjoy getting abducted too much, but just depends, I guess.
Well, they didn't do anything to James, and they didn't do anything to Eric. What happened to me. It didn't happen to anybody.
You mentioned at the beginning of the interview that most of the time it is a positive experience that a person will go through. So can you tell the listening audience what positive things do you see that it came out for you? What positive things did you see in yourself because of these experiences?
Okay, good question. It definitely helps you to develop your psychic abilities. That's for sure. And also telepathy. It helps you to develop telepathic communication. And I was talking about Sue Walker, or at Sandia on Twitter. If you want to follow her, she's incredibly interesting. And her website is officialfirstcontact.com. And she has what she calls the Primer 101. And it's free telepathy lessons. If you want free telepathy lessons, you can just go to her website and click on it, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. And just by reading it, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to actually go through the whole primer. Spelt primer, pronounced primer, I don't know, but you'll see it on the website. And as you read it, you can feel the veil lifting, literally, as you read it and how to do it. So that's my best advice to anybody. But in communicating with her, I started to get taken by what they're called the PON T apostrophe NTI from Zeta Reticuli 2, which is a binary system, which means they have 2 suns in their solar system, and they're particularly interested with this planet. And anyway, Sue Walker has been doing the rounds on internet radio and is starting to become world famous because of the PON T from Zeta Reticuli 2. And
to get back to the core of the original question, I think Blue was the one that said that question. Are certain people more likely to get abducted over others? And I would imagine so, right? Like, for example, the guy from Duck Dynasty, probably not on the priority list of inductees. You know what I mean? Whereas other people are probably a little more interesting to them. You know, people that have wakened up a little bit and have the potential to whatever that they're interested in. You know, I would imagine more spiritual beings, more telepathic beings, and whatnot are probably humans are probably more, you know, interesting to them, and they probably keep track of those people more. Which reminds me, there's we all know about the the Bob Lazar premiere, that documentary that just happened a month, two, whatever ago. That guy that made that, Jeremy Corbell, he made another documentary called I forgot what it's called, but it's about Roger Lear. You guys remember him? May he rest.
I know all about him. Yeah.
You know, and basically for those of you that don't know, he was world famous for removing these implants, that very tiny little metallic implants that all of a sudden showed up in people after they had an abduction experience, and they go through all these rigorous tests from all these different experts, from metallurgy experts to what have you. And it's a very good documentary. I'm going to find it real quick because you all should watch it. It's called Patient 17, and you can actually watch it on Netflix. That's the cool thing about that. And what's interesting is Roger Lear actually died before they finished filming the documentary. And then a couple of the experts, one in particular, I forget his name, completely disappeared after that documentary got released. I mean, like, we're gone. No trace of them. Nobody's known where. This came out 2 years ago. But the real kicker is at the end, where this guy he basically explains that the composition of the metal that was implanted in him. First of all, this piece of metal was actually attached to actual nerves in the body. It was surgically attached. And
proprioceptors. Proprioceptors. Yes.
While it was attached, it would emit a frequency of some kind. I can't recall the exact frequency. It was emitting
two different oscillating frequencies.
Yeah. And then as soon as they cut off the nerve attachment, no more frequency. And this guy goes to explain that the composition, this expert of some kind, gets down on a microscopic level and looks at this thing. He's like, yeah, I mean, first of all, this is made of metals that we not only are not on Earth, we've never even found on other comets or meteorites. Like, this is something out of this world. And then the odds, he explains that relative to the Big Bang Theory and how everything kind of formulated, at least according to the ancient theories, the odds of this metal being formed naturally were like 1 in 2,900 billion, or something ridiculous like that. And it's just a very interesting documentary. And I have a feeling, like I said, there's probably more people. It seems like some sort of tracking device, basically, or some sort of way to monitor, what this guy's doing, where he's at. And like I said, I just have a feeling that certain people are more interesting to them than others. Like Kim Kardashian, I'm sure, is not on that list. You know what I mean? There's, I think that's a thing.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that as well, too, because you find them interesting. Not only that, but somebody that is actually interested in learning what they want to teach, I think would be a big thing as well, too.
Right, absolutely. And, and there's definitely, I know, because my family's been riddled with all kinds of, definitely teen experiences, but also, I mean, a lot of them growing up were chalked up as ghost experiences. We grew up in this house in this forest town out northeast of Houston, which there was a huge ruckus before the town got built because it was built over Native American burial grounds. And in the middle of the forest, they just cut down a bunch of trees, just enough trees to put some houses in there. Our house was the first one there. And there was a lot of strange activity there. And most notably was, apparently there's a repeat cast of a few different entities that would show up, which my sister had talked about for years. We always kind of thought she was just kind of crazy or whatever. We didn't really pay it much thought. But my sister, here's what really kind of woke me up to this was my sister's best friend who basically lived at our house. I mean, every other night she was staying over for years. And she was a hardcore Christian, like to the book Christian. And then one night they both woke up, freaked out, woke up the whole house like 3 a.m. And she described the same ghost or entity that my sister had been seeing for years. And all this, like, she refused to come over to the house after that for years. Like, after years of being at our house every single day. And this is somebody that she didn't believe in ghosts. She never, or aliens or anything like that. You know what I mean? And so it just kind of makes me wonder. I wonder why, she was able to see it, or she had that experience. Because if I had to, put my money on red or black, I'd probably put it on, her not being of interest to those beings, but for some reason she had that experience. And then once I realized that's when the experiences started happening to me. I feel like it really has to do with once I realized, like, oh, this might be a real thing, and I kind of believed it, then all of a sudden that's where all these paranormal encounters start happening to me, and there's quite a lot of them at that house. And so I have a possible fact, as me and John have established that term, would be that your belief in them might very well have something to do with at least the rate or the recollectance of encounters that you have, I guess you could say.
I would agree with you on that, because I think or at least from what I've seen, again, from the things that I've studied, is that the conscious will only allow what it can accept. If it thinks it's going to hurt you or be damaging to you, it won't allow you to be able to even see and comprehend that aspect of it. So once, yes, you're willing to accept new realities and stuff, then yes, then those doors start to open up to you. I believe that 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Blue just posted a link to the documentary I was talking about in the chat room.
Yeah.
Go ahead and check that out. And,
yep, he sure did. And if
what else is interesting is that green-eyed people, or people whose eyes change color, okay? About 2 to 3% of the world population has green eyes, and close to 50% of abductees have green eyes. If you go back about 5,000 years, there were hardly any to no green-eyed people on the planet, okay? And then it was either a mutation or something that the ETs created themselves. And if you go to UFO conferences and you start to look at people's eyes, you'll notice a lot of people with green eyes and or these majestic blue eyes, or eyes that change color.
I got green eyes.
Well, there you go.
And I believe when I was younger, they used to be blue when I was really young, and then now they're green. I always remembered them as blue. So did they change? I don't know.
a friend of mine who I've known since I was like 6, same thing. Used to have blue eyes. Now her eyes are green. Undeniable. Yeah, that happens. That's interesting, though. Very few people have green eyes, but 50% of abductees have green. That's interesting.
And
if you go to the conferences, you'll see it, and you'll just see it. You're like, wow, your eyes are green, or they change colors. So, like I said, it's either a mutation and or ET created it, and they're very interested in it. I can't be exactly sure, but whatever. The statistics don't lie.
Yeah, and isn't there something as well with the blood type too? Is it RH negative or something like that?
But there's a big misnomer about that. B negative blood is also RH negative.
But
any kind of negative blood is RH negative, and it gets lost in the wash. So, if you say you're B negative, people don't equate that to RH negative blood, but it is.
Yeah, see, I wonder because most people just consider they don't include that in the Rh negative category, which me and my sister both are Rh negative, which is not very considering the experiences we have. But yeah, most people don't count B negative as well, and I wonder because I've read some statistics too. Like, isn't it like what 2 or 3% or something of humanity has Rh negative? I wonder what I could be completely wrong about that.
It's 15.
15, pretty low. So I wonder if that number factors in the B negative.
Probably. I mean, I know Brad Olson. He's Rh negative, just straight up Rh negative blood, and figures he's 6'9" and loves to research giants from around the world. I mean, who would have put that together?
And he drives in that little VW bug. That's great, man. You gotta love it. All right. So what did Mr. Blue post here about the blood? If your blood has protein, you're Rh positive. If your blood lacks the protein, you're Rh negative. Rh positive is the most common blood type. Having the Rh negative blood type is not an illness and usually does not affect your health. However, it can affect your pregnancy.
Yeah, and that's a joke before I knew that I was Rh negative. My sister found out that she was first. I used to make this joke, because basically, or whatever she is, I think that's what she is. But it basically means that she can take blood from anybody, but nobody can take her blood. I was like, wow, that's a perfect analogy. She just takes, and doesn't give anything. But then it turns out I'm the same blood type, so.
All right, awesome. So I had some other questions for you. So one thing I heard recently, and it really sparked my interest and stuff, was they were talking about how abductees could actually be being abducted by their future self in order not to break that free will universal law. What do you think about that, and what's your opinion on that?
I would definitely buy that. I would have to assume that I've been taken by myself. My higher self has taken me, or let's say altered my behavior to put me in certain situations to avoid something negative, for to keep me safe, to keep me away from certain people, to introduce me to certain people also. So it goes back to what I was talking about, that the higher aspects of ourself know all about us, but we know very little about them. So try to remotely view you through the higher eyes that are reviewing you, and that's you and your higher self. So I've been talking about the false artificial afterlife matrix lately. So this is interesting. You go to Egypt and you go into a lot of the tombs, and you'll see maps of where to go when you die. And guess where the maps take you? They take you to Orion. And that's supposed to be heaven. Well, guess what? A star constellation is not heaven. But to the ancient Egyptians, it was. That was their modality. That was their doctrine, was to go back to the stars from which they came. But what they're getting lost in is that they're not going to heaven. Who created the construct for them? Live a life, pray to aliens their whole life, die, and go back to the original source of the aliens that created them in the first place. That's the false afterlife artificial matrix. And that's why ETs developed religion to get us to pray to them instead of to the universal God consciousness. Who do advanced ETs pray to? The universal God consciousness. They pray to the omniverse because they know that that's what you're supposed to do. We're taught to pray to aliens so that we go to their artificial afterlife matrix. And I've been getting these incredible downloads lately about the grid, about the grid. So imagine, of course, you have the Earth, and then all these megalithic structures that are modeled after star constellations on geodetic markers all around the world. That creates a grid on the terrestrial plane of the Earth. But then let's go another 500 feet up above that, all the way around the Earth. There's another grid there. And then go another 500 feet, and then another 500 feet. And eventually you get to the moon. And then eventually you get to Mars. And Japanese scientists, like 10 years ago, discovered that you can break down all of that energy into code. Okay? So now it begs the question, who wrote the code? And why did they write it? Think about it. So it's interesting. In the Cydonia region on Mars, the pyramids are pentagonal, which is 5-sided. On Earth, they're 4-sided. Now, why would they be different on Mars than they are here? Well, because Mars has a different grid, but all the grids come together. Mach's principle, if you put an apple on the table and you push it with one finger, why does it push back? Because of the gravitational forces of all of the celestial bodies in the cosmos. You know, like if you blow up a planet, it's going to affect the orbits of all the other planets. So that's why everything is so completely connected, and it plays into the code. So this is what I've been thinking, and what I've been receiving in downloads is that defeat the code. Know in your mind that it's coded in your DNA to pray to these extraterrestrials and go to their false artificial afterlife matrix. At least an aspect of your soul will go there. The Egyptians believed that our soul would splinter into 13 parts. And I would have to believe that they're probably more correct than we are today with the way we believe and understand that our soul works. They're more evolved than us. I would have to think that they're right. So if it divides into 13 splinters or aspects or fractals, where all 13 of them go? So just like I exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, so does my soul. And I was telling my mom this recently, and she said, well, what I learned, she said, my best response to that is when you die, look for your oversoul. Look for your Godhead, because that is going to be the aspect of yourself that will actually take you to the light. And I was like, wow, Mom, that helped me fill in a lot of blanks.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Pretty deep, huh?
Yeah. Okay. You put several points. Wait, we can back over here. Is it gone?
Where did we get that from?
I think it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. So, first of all, actually first of all, let me start with this one. So here's a thought for the week for you guys right here is, you know how, we've discovered over the last 10 or 20 years, or, people have been saying this forever, but it's kind of mathematically at least been confirmed that we are actually in a binary star system, and that the other star is now a red dwarf or a brown dwarf, kind of dwarf, whatever. Like it already supernova,
Dwarf,
right?
Yeah.
It already had its life, and it exploded. Well, here's my question that I've never heard anybody address. I've never heard anybody ask, which is, shouldn't that supernova explosion have totally wiped us out too? Like if we're in the same solar system, shouldn't that have, bam, kind of change everything? Or is that explosion what formed our side of the solar system that we now exist? See what I mean? Nobody's ever really, everybody talks about the other side, but nobody talks about because a supernova is supposed to be unimaginably destructive, unbelievably massive. And if we're in the same solar system, I can't imagine that we weren't affected at all. So I'm just, I don't know. Have you guys heard anybody say anything along those lines or have any sort of answer for that? Because I haven't.
Definitely no answer for me. It's definitely a great question, though.
Yeah,
I know exactly who to ask is Mark D'Antonio, who is the video and photo analyst for MUFON. He'd love to wrap his head around that. He's also an astronomer. Anyway, brilliant man. I've interviewed him before, and he's too much of a scientist in my mind. But I was showing him pictures of ghosts and stuff, and he's like, I cannot tell you what that is. And I'm like, that was the answer I was looking for, Mark, because you're a scientist. You're not going to tell me it's a ghost, so, but yeah, he would be a great person to ask. That's for sure.
Antonio. All right. I shouldn't have jot that down. But real quick, okay, so Blue has asked this a couple of times already. I guess I'll answer this as quickly as possible. He wants to know where the name Gigi came from, which is a fair question. First of all, what kind of parent would name their child Gigi? That's not my actual name. My real name is Brian. It's a long accidental story. Like everybody in this industry thinks my name is Gigi, and by the time, it's just easier to run with it instead of try to change everybody's mind about what my name is. And plus, it's got a ring to it. It's more memorable than Brian, so I just kind of ran with it. But long story short, just to answer that question is a band that I'm in, which we're about. The original name of the band was Glowing Green. We've changed it to Don't Mind Us, and now the record's going to be called Glowing Green. But back in the day, I created a Twitter account for basically my pseudonym and our band mascot, which was, if you guys follow me on Twitter, which is where most people probably know me from, is that humanoid rabbit wearing the green tuxedo, smoking a cigar. That was because I wrote and recorded the whole record, and I didn't want to take any credit for it, and neither did the band that I got together to play it. And so we created this character to take the blame for all the music, right? And so we named this character GG Rabbit, which stood for the glowing green rabbit. And so I had that Twitter account, never used it once. But then back in 2014, I had this really crazy experience. I just found out about Jimmy Church. And so I wanted to get in and ask a question on Twitter, but I was too lazy to create my own account. So I just used the band's pseudonym account, and I started typing like that, and then I continued to be lazy, never made my own account. I still have never made my own account to this day. I still use that account. And so everybody started, even the other night at Jimmy's thing, when I walked in the room, he's like, Gigi Rabbit, everybody. Like, quit calling me Rabbit. Gigi, that's all you need to say. But so that's where it came from. Everybody, for the sake of conversation, instead of saying Rabbit every time, they just started saying Gigi. And it kind of just became a thing. And then by the time I got into this radio stuff, it's like, well, everybody already knows me as that anyway. Like, why change? Why fix what's not broken? So there's your answer, Blue. That's how it all happened. There you go. You're very welcome. Now, another thing I wanted to get into, though, real quick is, honestly, I don't know how much I can get into this because it's pretty complicated. Nobody's really talking about it, but this really goes hand in hand with what Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and the work that they've been doing over the last few years, the theories that they've been proposing, which are very well scientifically backed. One thing that not only are they not talking about, nobody's talking about this. I've never heard this before until a friend of mine sent me a portion of a documentary, which he gave it to me on a USB drive. I've tried to find, it's not on YouTube. I don't know why this isn't out there. But basically, these rock cut caves all over the world, like in India and what have you, where it looks, there's these megalithic cities and structures that are carved into the sides of massive rock walls and caves. And everybody's wondering, how is this possible? First of all, hammer and chisel, get the F.
Not a chance.
Second of all, if they just made one wrong chisel, the whole thing would collapse because of the weight of all the rock on top of it. And everybody's been puzzled all this time, Graham Hancock included. He had lectures on this. How is this possible? Obviously, they had some technology we didn't have. Well, one of the biggest light bulb turn-on moments I've ever had in my life was watching this documentary with these with a bunch of things that were proven like 30 years ago that I still haven't heard anybody talk about. Long story short is these were actually those structures actually already existed. Like they were built just like the pyramids were built, just like all these megalithic structures all around the world were built. They're built in the same way out in the open. But a massive rush of volcanic rock came, swept over it, and kind of engulfed these structures. And by massive, I mean massive. And to the point where they're overflowing all these cities and structures, like massive areas. And they've had this. And so what happens is, because this hardened lava rock, so let's say that did happen. You've got these buildings and structures that got covered in lava, and then the lava just hardened, right? Well, how do you get in there? Well, there's this technique that's been used for several thousand years. Kind of hard to explain. It's a very different density in the actual stone. So what you can do is you can chip little regular holes all along these parts of the outside, and then you fill hot water in, like really hot water in with it. And then it expands and it cracks only the hardened lava rock, and then that sheds away. And then they did that, and there's 100% proof evidence that they did this like 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And so a lot of these sites that we're seeing in India, these ancient sites that look like they were carved into a wall, no, there was no wall there at first. There was a structure there, and there were these massive volcanic episodes, which one thing, I can't do this thing justice. It's like a 2-hour long presentation. It's boring as hell. Most people won't make it through the first 30 minutes. But if you get through all the math, you get through all the science, you get through all that, you get to the point, it hits you like a kick to the teeth. Like, whoa, this is what happened. And they just chiseled away, they basically melted away these hardened lava layers. It just kind of fell off and revealed these structures. And there's actually modern examples of this in Mexico, also somewhere in Southeast Asia, where massive volcanic, like the latest one was like in the 1940s, 1950s, where it literally got flooded by volcanic, and we're talking like hundreds of feet of volcanic rock, whole cities being completely covered up, and they used these same ancient techniques to sort of chisel in there, expand it with hot water, and break away the lava to unveil the city that existed before that happened. And you compare what happened in the 40s and 50s, and you look at the aftermath photos of that, and then the aftermath photos of these sites that are thousands of years old. It's the exact same thing, and I can't believe nobody's talking about it. And I feel this is the first time I've talked about it too.
Do you know that? What is the name of the documentary?
That's what I can do is, I don't know, and I asked my friend. He doesn't know. He got it from somebody else. But what I can do is, it's definitely kind of old, probably 10 or 15 years old. But I have it on a USB drive. So what I can do is I can upload it to like Google Drive, and then I can share the link to you guys, and then you guys can check it out. Yeah, I've been, for a minute there, I was thinking about, obviously I would talk about it on my show, but we only have so much of a reach. I figured I'd probably give it off to somebody like Jimmy or something who could really put this out there. But then I'm thinking, because I got an offer to do, I won't say his name, but he puts on a lot of conferences throughout the year, and for some reason, I don't know, for some reason, he wants me to MC a couple events, but he also really wants me to give a lecture. I'm like, well, I don't have, what am I going to lecture? I'm a skateboarder, dude. What am I going to lecture about, right? But now I'm thinking oh, here's my ticket right here. Nobody's talking about this. I've got all this information. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to, go give them a, kind of in Hollywood, they have those, scout concerts where they bring you in, you perform in front of a bunch of A&R people, and they decide whether you suck or not. And if you don't suck, book you on some bigger gigs. Kind of the same thing. He wants me to give a demo presentation. So I think I'm going to do that with this. But yeah, it's just really, I can't believe that this information hasn't made it mainstream yet. Nobody has talked about it ever. I'm probably the first one out of anybody we all know to ever mention it just right now. And it makes
I want to check it out because I'm really fascinated by those temples and the ones that are carved into the rock.
Yeah.
I mean, right into the side of the mountain where the bridge, everything, it's just one solid stone. And if you're saying it's formed like that, I'd like to take a look. I think I could get through all that boring math and stuff because that's my cup of tea right there, natural stones.
You're going to love this. Yeah, whenever this is over, if not tonight, definitely tomorrow, I'll figure out a way to get it to you, both of you guys. And it's just right about 35 minutes into it, you have to get through that first 35 minutes in order to understand how they realized that this is the case. And once you understand the science and the microscopic discoveries and everything, then you get to the point and then they show you that one photo after all that being said, and then it just kicks you in the teeth like, oh, that's what happened. Like, that makes so much sense. I just can't believe nobody's really talking about this.
Praveen Mohan has. Do you know who Praveen Mohan has? Praveen Mohan. He's from India. He's a real scholar of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Purana, the Ramayana, the Vedas. He talks about it.
Oh, well, that makes sense because, people in India, like, if you were to ask the average person there, they're like, oh, yeah, duh. Like, how else would that happen?
The Ajanta Caves.
Exactly.
The Ajanta Caves, Kailasha Temple. And there's a bunch, actually, all throughout India. More there than I know of anywhere in the world.
Well, here's the thing is there's a lot. Yeah, like if you ask the average, traditional, well-learned person from India that's familiar with the Vedas and the Puranas and all that, they'd be like, yeah, duh. Like, how else would these things be here? Like, they know that. But in this industry that we're in, all these conferences we go to, nobody knows about this, which is really this weird sort of gap of knowledge here. And one thing that's always kind of amazed me is how, when it comes to megalithic structures, whether it's traditional structures like Machu Picchu or the pyramids or what have you, or it's these rock cut, side of the wall sort of situations, you find them everywhere except for North America. And I've always wondered why. Like, why? Like, they're in South America, they're in Middle America, not in North America. What's going on here? Well, I think that's what's going on. There's so much of America that has been volcano blasted, over recent history. And when you look at these, because some of these sites that they've melted and uncovered in not only India, but all parts of Asia and Europe and Northern Europe. And, if they wouldn't have done that, I mean, this is hundreds and hundreds of feet below volcanic rock. And we've got more than hundreds of feet in North America. I guarantee you there's got to be some stuff in here. Like, for example, in the Grand Canyon, they found that one spot way down there. They found Egyptian relics in there. They found ancient India relics that go back like 250,000 years ago. That's one spot. I bet you there's so many spots over North America that are just covered in volcanic dump that just people don't realize that happened. And I think that's where
I would have to agree.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, right? I think out in Vegas sometimes, driving around through this desert, you look at some of these hills and they look really peculiar. They hold the shape of a pyramid, I think, really easy. And we just haven't noticed it yet. What's the deal? But I agree that it seems weird that it's very empty in this area and everywhere else just has plethora of pyramids and temples.
Yeah.
When George Washington made his way into the Ohio Valley in the late 1700s, once he got through the Ohio Valley, there was pyramids everywhere, and they destroyed them. They literally blew them up.
I have heard about this.
Yeah, and I learned that through Jeffrey Boyd, who you can follow on mostly Facebook. He's very interesting. He also has done research and he's starting to get vetted by other independent researchers because, if you work for a university and you have this multi-million-dollar budget, if you go into forbidden archaeology, you can get all your funding taken away forever.
Oh yeah.
But he's discovered, along with other independent researchers, that the stones on the Great Pyramid were poured into casts and mold. They were molded into casts.
Right.
Larry Hunter talks about that as well too.
Yeah, so they're composites, with quartz crystalline poured into it also in the liquid form. And you got to heat those kind of rocks up to well over 2,000 degrees for a number of hours, which, conventional fire cannot do. And they didn't have technology back then to do it unless they had extraterrestrial technology to do it. And so the H blocks at Puma Punku also.
Yeah. So obvious.
H blocks.
Yeah,
it's all prefab construction.
Yeah,
and it makes more sense to do it that way.
I would think that those would have to be poured in order to make them so precise, make as many as there is out there and stuff. I think taking rocks and molding them into that would be, you would have to me, pour it, melt it down and re-pour them.
Yeah, that's the only way. I mean, they fit together like Lego blocks. And how do they make Lego blocks? Yeah, same deal. and
there's evidence of vitrification and thermal heating also.
Yeah.
So
and there's just clear signs.
Forbidden archaeology,
Yeah. I mean, look no further than, was Christopher Dunn, who he just recently, well, I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago or something, was on Jimmy's show. Before that, I think the last major radio show he came on was in 2012. So a lot of people don't know about this guy. If you watch Ancient Aliens, you definitely have.
Oh, I know.
If you don't recognize the name, you would know his face. But he's see, I love people like that because we got people like us who will talk about anything, go anywhere. But he's very strict on, I can tell you how these were not built. Who built them? Not my problem. When were they built? Not my problem. I'm just telling you, this is not possible with this, or this. Look at his background. It's just okay, you cannot argue with that. And I that.
You were talking earlier because my trade before all of this was a stonemason. I just still do stone work. And you're 100% correct. I mean, I can sit there and be working with a piece of marble, and if I go to cut it and use some water, that water gets in the vein. Next thing you know, it just falls apart on me. I got no choice in the matter. It just falls sometimes. And so, you get a hammer and chisel and you start chiseling on some stone and you come across the vein, especially you're sitting there trying to chisel out a story and you got the whole wall done. All of a sudden you hit the wrong vein and half the wall comes down and it's like, sorry, what do we do now? Let's change the story. What do we do? Start over? No. They had to have some great method to make it efficient, to make it reliable, because it's amazing. I need to get down there so I can look at some of the stuff firsthand. That's my bucket list.
Me too, man. I can't, because I've heard, I know many people that have been to not only out there but also the pyramids even. Just I can only imagine. It's one thing for us to have been studying this our whole lives and listening to other people who have been there versus seeing it yourself. You can tell by listening to these people talk, like John Anthony West, rest in peace, or Robert Duvall, anybody. You can tell in their tone of voice when they're describing what it's like. Robert Schoch, when they first see it, you can just tell it's this humbling, majestic experience. Like, whoa, this is another level of shift. That you really can't fully, I would imagine, that you really can't fully appreciate unless you're actually there. Yeah, me too. I want to go to all those places again. You also just reminded me of, that one unfinished obelisk in Lebanon. It's 1,200 tons. It's the biggest piece of a megalithic structure ever discovered. It was still in the quarry. Graham Hancock's got a famous photo standing on the top of it. He looks like an ant on top of a skyscraper. That's how big this thing is. And what this little part of a documentary I was talking about that I'll send you guys later is they show that it wasn't, the typical theory was, oh, there was something they messed up when they cut it, and so they didn't use it for some reason. Well, after you look at this and they show you video and photos of it, there is undeniable traces of that same sort of chisel a column, a whole column, and then fill it with hot water and expand the molten lava rock. That is all around this megalithic column that never got used. So it just goes to show, even before modern people found it, like I said, and like they said, they were exposed. They figured out how to do this a couple thousand years ago. So before modern academics came across it, it was already, that thing was covered in hundreds of feet of lava before they even got a chance to do anything with it. And that's really what happened to it. And it's really hard to explain to you without you having seen it. But once you understand, I really wish I remembered the guy's name. Him and his son did a lot of experiments, and they published a lot of publications, and everything from science to this, that, back in the 70s. And to this day, not one single person has not only not refuted their claims, nobody's even tried. There's literally no arguing with the evidence behind this, and it's been there since the 70s. And I'm actually trying to get a hold, because the main guy's dead, but his son, I'm pretty sure is still alive, and I'm trying to get in touch with him. It's just one of several things where, a lot of the stuff that we talk about on these shows, like yours and mine and John's, is it's very relatable just through talking about it. But something like this is, I could talk about it for 10 hours. You're not going to get it unless you see it. You really have to see it. And that's where the problem comes in, is a lot of, like I said, it's 35 or 40 minutes of hardcore, dork science before you understand what he's talking about, which allows you to understand what's happening. Unfortunately, most people don't have that patience. They barely made it through high school. Why are they going to listen to 40 minutes of math, when they're 45 years old? Most people are just not going to do it.
Unless they're geeked into all of that stuff like us.
Exactly.
Because I'll listen to it for sure, and I love having the math in there because it makes it even better. Because I'll probably be down to doing the math. So if somebody's doing it for me and showing me what formulas they're using and how they got to it, that's even better. I mean, I love stuff like that.
See, me too. And then the other one was just real quick is this guy. In fact, I talked to David Adair about this, and he agreed wholeheartedly that when you actually, I forget where the video is, it's somewhere, but this guy really went out of his way. It's like a 45-minute long, he's just doing math on a chalkboard. It's the whole video, which nobody's going to watch that. But I did, and I watched this thing, and he basically he literally proves that NASA has no idea what they're talking about when it comes to the mass and the size of planets, and the mathematics are broken. They don't make sense. Just because you get an answer at the end of a bunch of numbers doesn't mean that answer is logical. And NASA has even addressed this too. We just they basically said we just, they have a little fact sheet. You go to NASA's website, there's a fact sheet out there where they show the formulas and a little asterisk, and you go down below we still don't know what this is, but this might be it. It's kind of they really, we like to think that NASA is the end all be all of knowledge about the planets in our solar system and how they interact, and not to mention gravity. That's another point I really like to make tonight, is gravity. Listen, folks, here's the real definition of gravity. It's this. There are so many different forces and actions and reactions that happen in the universe between planets throughout space that we don't know what the hell is going on. We don't know what's causing it. We don't know how it works. We just know when this is here and that's here, this happens. When this is here and that's here, this happens. And they try to make it sound like, oh, we know why this happens. It's because of gravity. No. The definition of gravity is all of these different happenings in space, all of these different actions and reactions that we don't know what caused them. We don't know where these causes came from. We don't know the nature of them. And so we just interloop all of these different things under this title called gravity, which makes it sound like we know what it is. Really, it's just a bunch of different aspects of reality that we don't understand. We just attribute it into this one thing called gravity. Even Einstein himself had some. Oh, I just saw the quote yesterday. Totally forgot what it was. But that was his point. Was like, you don't know what the hell gravity is. We don't even know if gravity's one thing. Gravity might just be a collective explain away for multiple different forces of nature that we just don't understand.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, we got a good question here from Andrew out there. Basically, to you, Marcus. I did that because I came up on your name came up. All right, Reverend John. What is your thoughts on people? Hold on. Who have the feeling they have been programmed, are waiting for something to happen? I guess kind of like a Manchurian Candidate type of deal. Do you feel that there are people out there who have been abducted that actually are programmed and waiting for something to happen? I know there. I don't know recall the guy's name, but there was somebody who said he was a hybrid and he was these guns in his house waiting for something to happen when he actually died, and that's when they found all the guns in his house. What is your thoughts on those?
Yeah, his name's Jeffrey Lash, and his girlfriend acknowledged, he's definitely a hybrid. He's half alien and half human. But the programming. So let's go into programming. When you get taken and you get chipped or implanted, it is so very simple for advanced ETs to manipulate our brains through simple wave technology. And they do this with rats. You can excite the prefrontal cortex of a human or even an animal's brain, and you can make two animals have sex with each other. You can make those two same animals fight each other to the entire death. Okay, this is very old and basic technology that our government, that our military, that the MyLabs and MK Ultra have been using for a very, very long time. So is it easy to program somebody? Absolutely. And then, let's say you drink bottled water every day. Guess what? 2/3 of the fluoride and all the other crap that we get through our tap water, you absorb topically through your skin when you bathe. Okay? So you can drink bottled water all you want, and most of it's in BPA-rich containers, which is cancerous. Petroleum products leach into the water, so you're basically drinking motor oil, and you think you're being healthy, but you're not. Anyway, but yeah, it's very, very, very simple to program a human being. And the best person to ask about this is Misha Johnston. Misha Johnston. I don't know if you know her story, but I wouldn't say this if she didn't come out and say it herself, but 5 of her siblings were killed by MK Ultra or whoever the forces may be because her parents were not cooperating. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, don't kill this child. And they end up taking her into the MK Ultra program and turned her into a sex slave and all this other stuff. And I interviewed her a number of times and we became personal friends. And I asked her, I said, so do they do this through hypnosis? And she said, no, they do it through drugs and through wave technology. And I'm like, wow, it's very simple to do that to people. Remember Tim Russert, Chris Matthews and Tim Russert used to have that, I think it was called Hardball or something, where one was on the left, one was on the right, and they would just sit there and argue with each other. When Tim Russert died, out of nowhere, but supposedly, and I'm only going the supposed route, allegedly he was going to come forth with some really incriminating information, and they just zapped him with this wave technology. It gave him a heart attack and he died. So this kind of technology is very old. It's been used for a very, very long time. It's very esoteric and hidden and enigmatic to us because we're not taught that this stuff is real, but it's totally real. So to answer the question, can somebody be easily controlled? Absolutely. And then you throw in the chemtrails, which are designed literally to alter our DNA and our anatomical metabolic chemistry. Okay? And they're doing that so that we can be more easily manipulated through this kind of technology. And then with the new 5G that's coming out, it's scary. I mean, it is scary. You know, you'll be able to download a movie in like 10 seconds on your phone, but the cancerous waves that come off of that are just incredibly deadly. So it's very simple and old technology to be able to manipulate people's brains. And here's something that I figured out in the last year that I never really understood before, is that MK Ultra will cast spells on people. They don't even have to have an operative in the field.
I believe it.
They can literally, I mean, they literally have witches, black witches on the payroll that know how to summon demons, literally, and attack you psychically, can affect your actions, can manipulate your thoughts, can manipulate your moods, can make you laugh, make you cry. It is unbelievable how easily manipulated we are and can be, and that our pineal gland, created by ETs, was created so that they could manipulate us. It's very simple for them to do. It's not complicated. Not all of the thoughts that we think are our own. It's very simple for them to place thoughts in our mind. And this, I believe, has happened to me and others who've gone through the abduction scenarios that I've gone through, is that MK Ultra can actually send an artificial demon to you. It's basically a spiritual entity, but it doesn't have an organic soul. It has an artificial soul, and they use them as weapons. So imagine being able to use a weapon that nobody can even prove exists. And this is all very old technology, and it is technology. Witchcraft is not necessarily technology, but a lot of it is. A lot of it's alchemy.
Kind of.
You know, and all of that is very, 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 very real.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that really, this is several years ago. I don't know. Do you guys remember Mr. Bean?
Yeah, oh yeah, I love Mr. Bean.
Rowan Atkinson?
Yeah.
That guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him, man. He's great, dude.
So he, in fact, he just put out a new movie like 2 months ago. The third Johnny English movie just came out. But it was in the second Johnny English movie. That was like, what, like 2011? Something like that. That's, ironically, that's where it synced in, because a big part of that whole movie was at the end where they gave the dude a drug or a chemical that made him, basically hypnotized him, and they had a little earpiece in his headset, and they convinced him to assassinate the president or the prime minister or whatever it was in that movie. And it didn't really, like, you know, this is years ago before I got involved with all this. But that was one of the first things. Like, what more? You know, really, from Mr. Bean? That's how I realized this. But no, they painted a pretty clear picture. And, it was like, wow, yeah, like it makes sense, because before that, I always thought, you know, like these people that do these assassinations, or you know, the Oklahoma City bomber and then the shooter from all those things. It's like, what? Like, they can't be human. Like, humans don't think about human beings. All we want is, we want to be happy. We want to have friends. We want our friends to be happy, and we just want to be comfortable and happy, have some food, we have some drinks once in a while. I don't know, play some pool. You know, we just want to hang out. And so where in that line of thought does it come into play? Oh, I'm going to kill this guy. And I know that there's no chance I'm going to get away, and I'm going to go to jail for life. yeah, let's do that. Like, who the hell is gonna do that? It's like, well, they very clearly must not be themselves. There must be some other influence going on, whether it's chemically induced, like in the Mr. Bean movie, or the Johnny English movie, rather, same guy, or if it's, very well could be magic, black magic, what have you. And yeah, I really don't think that there's got to be some influence there.
Let's ask this question here then. So if this is happening, and then the programming could be happening from both sides as far as, and I just want to I want this on both sides. It could be happening from our government in some type of really dark, deep-seated program like you're talking the MKs. But couldn't there also be positive programming happening from extraterrestrials, maybe pre-programming unique people on this planet right now in order to maybe have us prepared and have them prepared to help us into a new aspect, into, if something happens on this planet, because it does seem like past history and stuff, some of the, how do I want to say it? Past legend and stuff talks about maybe how, like in the Native Americans and stuff, how the sky people helped them underground, massive, overtaking on this earth or something like that. Do you think maybe this type of communication could be going on at this point right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always been going on. For example, Tesla, he will tell you that he got his information from a Martian, and that's where he got the nickname, the mad scientist. That's where it came from. And all his peers laughed at him, looked down on him, scorned him. And he stuck to it. He's like, I'm getting this from Mars. Whether he got it from Mars or not, he knew it came from somewhere else. Einstein came up with a theory of relativity. He was outside, it was foggy, and he was watching the fog bend around this light, and therefore there was a light and fog's bending around it. Therefore, the light from the light itself was bent also. And that gave him the theory of relativity. Nostradamus would have this little thing of water and would get like a little paintbrush and kind of stir it up and would start to have all these visions. Now, where does that come from? Was that another aspect of himself helping his lower dimensional self? Was it an extraterrestrial? It's debatable, but your question was, can they do it for positive reasons? And I say absolutely. Is there a battle, between the light and the dark over certain individuals also? I would have to think that there is.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I ask is because, on the spiritual side of it, people keep talking about the ascension. The Mayan calendar and all of that talks about us going into the different worlds. And, well, I know the Mayan calendar didn't talk about the end of the world, only the end of the world as we knew it, and that we're moving into a new time. But it also talks that there's going to be natural disasters. So I'm just curious, as we're moving forward in this time, do you think that type of planning is actually going on at this moment to prepare us for some type of doomsday, and so that we make it through that, or at least a majority of us do?
I believe so. What I believe is that we're not actually in the third dimension anymore, that we're right in the middle of the fourth, right in the middle of it. That's why everything is so messed up right now. As above, so below. So what's happening there? You know what I'm saying? What's happening with the leadership of the councils up there? Just like we're arguing and not agreeing on anything, our leadership, I'm not going to get into politics, but what's happening up there also? There's got to be something going on up there also. There's just too much going on. But I believe that we have been in the fourth for a long time. And I tell you why. Bloodletting rituals has been going on for thousands of years. That's a fourth dimensional Draco-reptilian ritual that has been going on for thousands of years. And it's done in all religions also, for the most part. In the Bible, how many times did they sacrifice animals in the name of God? I don't think God would want you to kill a lamb to prove anything.
Exactly.
I mean, really? My God kills lambs?
Yeah, no.
My God kills lambs, and then he has you paint an X over the doors of the Jews in Egypt. So when Yahweh in Exodus 11 came in and killed all the Jews, he didn't know which ones were his chosen people and which ones were the Egyptians. So he had them kill lambs and paint X's over the door so that he didn't kill the wrong people. This to me is Yahweh, the biblical God, who is the alien who is actually...
The show must go on.
The show must go on. It is going on.
Yep, it did. All right, so hopefully this will work and we can retry them. Otherwise, we could just put them in the chat room, right?
Actually, you know what you could do is he can Skype me,
and then
I can bring him in on my end.
All right. I think we're good now. He just walked away, but I think we're good.
Yeah, come back, John.
He's on the phone with somebody. I think we're good now.
It's
So
my mama.
it's his mama.
It's my mama.
Yeah,
Hello.
we're good.
Talking to mom about Yahweh killing lambs.
Count on Mom coming at the wrong time.
So, Gigi, why don't you tell us a little bit about your show for the people out there that might not know who you are?
Right on. Yeah.
And who do you got on this week?
We've got Adrian Valera, who is the guy that puts on the Disclosure Fest every year in Los Angeles, amongst other events. Also, before all this, he was a very huge A&R guy in Hollywood in the music industry. He used to, many bands that you've heard of that have been together for like 20 years and had very successful careers were initially scouted by this dude. But he kind of broke away from Hollywood, which totally understand that. And now he's doing the Disclosure Fest every year. He's got a couple other conferences he's doing. Just very cool, very interesting guy. We're going to have him on tomorrow. And it's going to be our first show of the new year. And I'm pretty excited about that. So, we've been trying to have him on for months. His schedule is so chaotic. But I think it's actually happening this week, which is tomorrow. If you want to check that out, we're live every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific on the Fringe FM. Or if you want to join the chat room, just go to shifthappenspodcast.com. We broadcast on Spreaker. You can talk stream live and tune in and everything else. But if you want to join the chat room where all the cool kids hang out, that's over at Spreaker. And if you go to shifthappenspodcast.com, we've got the Spreaker player right in the middle of the website. You just click play, click the little chat icon, bing bam boom, you're in there. And I've got a couple of comedy bits I've got planned for tomorrow as well. So,
and don't be afraid to buy Gigi a shot when he's on air.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do that tomorrow. In fact, that's something we were going to do. We weren't really trying to do that on the main show. It was more of a B-side episode and Patreon episode thing. But unfortunately, I do have a little bit of Malort left, and so we might as well finish it off tomorrow. And what's funny about that is, because people have been asking me over the last month, like, what exactly does Malort taste like? I never had a good answer until a couple of friends of mine that do another YouTube channel. They gave the best. This is the best description, so that you know that your money is really going towards torturing you. Like, here's the description. First of all, it tastes like Emery put it, it tastes like you're drinking a shot of Pine Sol. That's a pretty apt description. Yeah. Then combine that knowledge with the other fact that Malort was originally invented and used in the 30s as a floor cleaner. So that's every time you donate $5, that's what I'm drinking. So now you know.
A little shot of Murphy's oil. Probably tastes better.
Dude,
All right,
am I echoing? Am I still echoing, guys?
No, you're good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
We're
one
good.
thing that before we got shut down by Big Brother is you reminded me. Have you guys heard of Allison Coe? Allison Coe, COE. So she does. It's a type. I forget exactly what it's called. Some sort of quantum hip. He hasn't either. Okay, yeah, some sort of quantum hypnotheric sessions where instead of essentially what happens is you go into a hypnosis and you gain access to your higher self from another dimension. And you are able to communicate via the mediator, which in this case is Allison Coe. Now, Allison Coe, she's really popular on YouTube, but she really doesn't try to be. Like, she only posts a video once every couple of months, and what she does is she gets the transcripts from all of her sessions, and she finds all the common threads, and then she makes a video about, she just sits there and talks about all the common threads of these regressive, hypnotheric, quantum, higher self-conscious contact sessions. And over the last few months, there's just been this overwhelming response from many different people's higher selves talking about how coming up very soon, and they're all very specific about this, like in the next year or so, there is going to be, I'm going to try to make this very simple and understandable. What could only be described as like a wave of conscious realignment to embrace our transition into the fourth dimension, and then from there to the fifth dimension, kind of like what John was talking about. But she also mentioned that there are not a whole lot, but there's quite a little bit of people that are not ready for it. And according to all of these different people's higher selves, these people that aren't ready are going to be very temporarily, for a matter of like 15 hours or something, abducted, I guess you could say, or just kind of removed from the earth into these crafts for a brief period of time, while the rest of the world gets this sort of wave of download, which all of their different higher selves described as a visible ray of light that you can see coming from the distance that's going to kind of wash over everybody. It's kind of going to be this level of awakening and realization. And it sounds kind of crazy. And my aunt, who initially turned me on to this lady, she told me about this. And we had her as a guest on the show once. She called in, like, we had Greg Braden on the show. Whenever we have somebody really interesting, she'll call in once in a while. But she's actually my aunt. And when she told me about this, like, I was pretty, like, I didn't care what she was saying. Like, I didn't buy it. Like, it just didn't click with me. And then one day, I was just bored out of my mind. Like, whatever. I'll check this out, see what this lady says. And I literally got the goosebumps all over my body. I got the chills down my spine. Like, it really resonated. And her name is Allison Coe, C-O-E. And especially you, Jeff, and John, both of you. I think you would really, at the very least, find it very interesting what all of her clients under hypnosis in communication with their higher selves are very specifically reporting the same things. And I feel like you two would be very interested in what they're saying, whether it's directly, literally true or not. They're certainly all not talking about nothing at all. You know what I mean? And that might be something worth checking out.
I think it's really fascinating, and that's what I'm really interested in, is what is happening, because there's so much documented in the history and the manuscripts and with the Mayans and all of that. And so I'm really curious on what are we moving into, and what are your thoughts on that, Rev?
I was talking about it earlier on the first episode of our multiple episode.
Yeah, that's why we got kicked off. Thank you.
No, but what she's saying, it kind of plays into what I'm saying. you know. And what dimension are we in? It's debatable, you know, but whatever. We're definitely morphing and shifting upwards. It depends who you are also. It depends on who you are and your actions, what kind of human that you are in this particular incarnation. It could leave you stuck here, or you can evolve. It's really up to you. What do you want out of it? What kind of, you know, what you put out to the universe is what you're going to get back. So what do you want to come out of it? Do you want to feather your own nest? Do you want to help other people? It's not wrong to pray for yourself. It's not wrong to pray for people that you know and that you love, but it's equally important to pray for people that you don't know. It really is, especially people, those of greatest need. It's real important to pray and meditate that way. You know, so yeah, pray for yourself, pray for your family, pray for people you know, pray for people that you don't know. That will help you along your path of ascension more than you would ever know, is to not just think of yourself and people that you know and that are close to you. There's a lot of people out there that are suffering, and this is an actual statistic that will be very believable, that if all the billionaires would just start to give away some of their money into the countries in which they live, we can get rid of starvation, we can get rid of housing problems, we can get rid of pollution, we can get rid of anything that we want. But it would take them to get off the top of their stack of billions of dollars and give it to their own people that they've made all this money off of. So in the afterlife matrix, guess where they're going to go? So,
and that's
yes.
the thing is, you know, look at NASA, right? They get, last I checked, I don't know, might be more, might be less. When I checked, they had a $40 billion per year budget. Now, to put that into perspective, right? Let's say it was $50 billion a year, right? If they spent $50 million, they still have over $249 billion. See how crazy that is? And what are they doing? Nothing. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, they're shooting some satellites. They're producing
nothing that's benefiting us.
Whatever.
No,
there's
NASA's
a couple of things,
but
but
what's really going on anyway?
Just give me like $50 billion. Do you understand how much money? Like when $50 million makes 50 billion, only way over 49 billion. Dude, just give me 1 million. Give me one. Give John one. Give Jeff one. Give that homeless guy one. You know what I mean? What are they doing? I don't know. It's just, I think a lot of money is being put in the wrong places. And
we've seen this research come out about China. Oh, they're the first ones to get photographs of the dark side of the moon.
Oh, I heard that they were.
That is the biggest crap. It is the biggest bunch of crap. I believe that they did it, but we had that footage in the Apollo missions back in 1967. We saw the dark side of the moon with the lunar orbiters. They took all the photographs you could ever want of all these different obelisks, all these different artificial structures, biodomes, buildings, factories with pipes coming out emitting smoke, UFOs. That all came out probably way before 1967. Yeah. But that's where they kind of slipped and accidentally let the information out and then retracted it and redacted it and never acknowledged that they said it in the first place. See. So NASA, never a straight answer.
Never.
They're a huge front for what's really been going on. Yeah. Werner von Braun was creating a secret space program with some private investors back in the 70s when he quit working for NASA. He quit working for NASA because they put all these controls on him. He found this multi-billion-dollar interest that wanted to create a secret space program and make him the chief engineer. And guess what? He died a couple years later. Right after that, bang. And I bet that was an accident.
You know, when you look at now, don't get me wrong, Bart Seibel, pretty crazy guy, a little bit out there, but he did. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story. He made 2 documentaries. Well, he made more than that, but the 2 main ones are a funny. Well, the first one was Astronauts Gone Wild, which is him confronting all the astronauts, getting punched in the face by the astronauts because he tried to make them first of all, like, okay, I get that you don't believe that they went there, but dude, come on, there's a way better way to approach this. Good for you. You got punched in the face, rightfully so. But
yeah, I saw the prequel, Girls Gone Wild. I mean, when the producers, I don't know.
That's still in your video closet?
I wonder if he got sued over the name. I've always wondered that. But no. So the next one, though, the next one is a little bit, that was just kind of an appetizer. The second one, though, was called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. And here's a lot of people dismiss Bart Seibel, and I get it. Yeah, he's a little out there. I understand that. But you got to look at this shift, which is he got in touch with NASA, which, by the way, I don't know if you've ever tried to get in touch with NASA. Quite much easier said than done. But he did. And he got reels of footage from the Apollo mission with Buzz and Collins and, you know, the original crew, the first ones that went up there. And one of the reels of footage he got, they accidentally gave to him that was never supposed to be released. I have a feeling that as tightly knit as NASA is, I have a hard time believing that just slipped through the cracks. I feel like somebody probably let that get out. Either way, they got an official reel of NASA footage, which is the whole basis of that documentary. What it shows is Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Collins out in the shuttle, literally faking the shot of Earth, which they were trying to pretend like they were in lunar orbit. But what you see in the footage is what they did is, instead of putting the camera up to the window, they put the camera all the way at the back side of the shuttle, and they had the window, let me try to get this, they had the window like way up front, and the Earth, let's say, was this big, but they turned out all the lights. And so when the lights are out, it looks like there's just a little Earth right here, right? But really, they were in Earth orbit, and they just used the circular window to cut out the rest of the Earth to make it look like that they were way further away. You see what I mean? And there's footage of this in the documentary. And so they're shooting the footage, and then all of a sudden you hear Buzz or whoever goes, all right, cut. The lights come on, and then you see that it was all outcropped by the window. So it's like, okay, wait a minute. If you're really out there by the moon, why are you faking the shot of the Earth? The only shot, by the way, that we've apparently ever had, the single photo ever taken of the Earth, was credited towards that mission. But here we have the footage where they're actually in just outside of Earth orbit, like not even halfway to the moon. And so why are you faking the shot? Why are you faking the shot if you actually went out there? And, well, here's the thing, is the Van Allen belt. A lot of people don't, they kind of know what it is. They don't really know what it is. Oh. But here's the thing about the Van Allen belt. It's hundreds of thousands, probably about tens of thousands of miles of radiation, which, to put this in perspective, in 1992, NASA released a press statement saying, I'm totally paraphrasing, but this is basically what they said was, we've learned a lot more about the Van Allen radiation belt, and we've realized that we have a lot of work that needs to be done before we can send humans through this alive. Well, wait a minute. The Van Allen belt is halfway to the moon. We were supposed to have gone through that when we went to the moon back in the 60s, much less the 70s. And you're saying we still don't know how to go through it? Wait a minute. And then you put that together with them faking the shots of the Earth from the lunar, and then things like, they tried to present the president or the prime minister, whatever you call it, of Holland, or was it Sweden? I don't know, Holland or Sweden. And they gave them some moon rocks, right? And they were, in a little case or whatever. And it's, I don't know if you know, but it's a international federal no-no, a hardcore federal no-no to crack open a case that has moon rocks in it because of contamination, right? Well, this president of Holland or Sweden, whichever one it was, he wasn't buying it for a second. Neither am I. But he didn't buy it for a second. The first thing he did was he cracked it open, and he did a little test on it. Well, it's petrified wood. It's not even moon rocks. It's petrified wood. So, okay, if you went to the moon, why are you faking Why are you faking shots of the Earth? Why are you sending fake moon rocks as a gift to presidents of other countries? And there's just so much effery around the whole situation now. But here's my thing, though. I think we've been not only to the moon. I think we're already on Mars. We're doing all kinds of stuff. I just don't think we went there by strapping humans to a firecracker and setting it off. I think there's some secret space like Stephen Greer pretty clearly proved, there's with documents and everything, like there are secret space programs. They have other forms of technology, whether it's anti-gravity, zero energy, what have you, rotating Mercury, what have you. I think, this all really stems back to Tesla and some of the stuff that he figured out, and which to this day, we talk about Tesla like we know all the stuff he was ahead of his time with. We don't know 90% of all the work that was immediately abducted by the CIA and NASA and everything else that to this day has never been publicly released. So I have a feeling, well, I know for a fact, I think as a possible fact, I guess we could say, I don't think we went there on firecrackers. I think there's some other technology being used, and this whole firecracker space shuttle stuff is just kind of like, yeah, we might go to the moon, we might not. Yeah, we found a rock. I don't know. Maybe we didn't. Well, in the meantime, they're in the background with all this extra technology, and they're really finding out what's going on. And, like a lot of astronauts have said, I think when they, not only to the moon, but also Mars. And if you talk to Billy, oh, Jesus, what's his name? We had him on the show. Big guy. I don't know. Forget his name.
Billy Carson.
Billy Carson, yeah. And so his whole team and his research group is talking about Venus and Mercury. And they're finding all these structures over there, which is pretty interesting. Nobody talks about Venus or Mercury, but they've been talking about it for years. And they've been talking about on Mars how there's been, hundreds of feet deep worth of lakes all over Mars for years. Then all of a sudden, a few months ago, NASA finally comes out and says it. Yep, there's lakes on Mars. There's a lot of water there. In fact, there's more water there than there is on here, on Earth. And I don't know. I just, I've got a pretty good effery detector, and I smell it all around those Apollo missions, all around NASA. Never a straight answer. And but here's another point I would like to make right before I let you guys have it, is when it comes to all this secrecy stuff, naturally, especially people like us that do these shows like this, and we want to know what's going on. When we're denied access to what's going on, what's our immediate thought? Oh, they're up to no good. What's going on here? Suspicious, right? But I still kind of maintain the possibility that there might be a very good reason why we probably shouldn't know everything. A lot of us like to think that, very common thing that's said in our community, like, we're ready. We believe in aliens. We believe in UFOs. Like, the Buru could be 2 days away from colliding with us. We don't care. We just want to know, right? We think that until you actually figure out a couple things about what's really going on. Especially one of my best friends, one day he found out a couple of things, and he's gone. Never coming back. Like, he couldn't handle it.
That's it.
And
once that transition happens, it's game over. I mean, we can never go back to what we had. It will always be different. And so, yeah, you make a great point there. I mean, are we truly ready? I mean, I know on the spiritual end, people always talk about, oh, I want to see this, I want to see that. And do you really? Because if
Yeah.
you saw everything that is around us and stuff, you wouldn't be able to concentrate on your mundane things. You would, you'd be driving a car and see a spirit fly by and go, "What was that?" and crash or something to that extent. So, yeah, I agree with you on that fact of that. What say you, Rev?
I believe that we are ready because the way that the status quo is now, it's all based on billionaires making more billions and at the expense of we humans. We are basically here for them to make money off of us. That is our sole purpose to them. They don't care about us in any way whatsoever. So until, like I said, we cannot have disclosure until we realize that religion is all based on extraterrestrials. Once we realize that the gods are extraterrestrials, only then can we have disclosure, and we cannot have enlightenment without disclosure. We can't have it. So are we ready or not? I don't think it really matters if we're ready or not. But what does matter is that the status quo will remain the same and it won't change. And if anything, it will get worse. The state of Virginia has more missing children than any two states combined. Now, why? Because that's where all the pedos from government go through the CIA. The CIA farms these kids and they use them for all these rituals. So if we don't ever evolve, that's just going to keep on and keep on and keep on. We're destroying our planet. We absolutely are, but it's not so much we. It's those billionaires. There's 82 families basically that run the world. 82 families that run the world. They're all billionaires. If we do not try to ascend as a species, then we're going to just be stuck wallowing around in the mire, and it won't change, and it will only get worse. It will only get worse. Natural disasters are getting worse. Political climate is getting worse. The economy is getting worse. I'm telling you, real estate's going to bust again sometime soon. I want us to evolve, and we can't if we're stuck in this lower dimensional paradigm, which is easy to create a false sense of complacency. And I believe that most of us have done that already.
Right. Yeah, and you bring up a good point, which is a lot of people don't. Yeah, people talk about it all the time, but people don't really let it sit and simmer. The point of how many people, mostly kids, but a lot of people go missing every year just in the United States. It was either 2016 or 2017. I didn't check last year. It's only been like 5 days this year. So, but 2017, I think it was 800,000 people went missing. And by missing, I mean never found, didn't find the remains, like missing.
Nothing.
That's in America. Where are all these?
Just in America?
Just in America. Now,
wow.
Most people don't realize that. You've got to think about that. Where are these people going? And then you also got to wonder, where are these people showing up out of nowhere, willing to, assassinate some prime minister somewhere? Like, think about it. Even if you paid me $2 billion to assassinate somebody, well, what good is that going to do me? I'm going to be in jail for the rest of my life. Like, what? That's not a real motivation. There's got to be some other psychological thing going. Like, yeah, I don't know. You might be able to afford the high-grade Fruit Loops in jail. You might get the high-grade sweatpants, But that's not worth $2 billion of being in jail for the rest of your life. Like, there's got to be something else going on. And I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of serious psychological effery, whether it's my labs or the Montauk situation. These people aren't coming from nowhere at all, and there's a bunch of people. And this is just America. Those are United States of America stats, 800,000. Just imagine the rest of the world. Imagine China. They got 1 billion people over there. Half of them don't have internet. No, easy peasy. People can disappear anytime. Billy's gone. Have you seen him? Nope. Neither have I. Well, I guess he's gone.
He,
That's
he
all.
walked into the forest.
Yeah, he walked into the forest. That's why we call it the forest of the devil. It's because you're not supposed to go in there. There goes Billy. Well, he's gone. Yeah, that happens all the time. And there's definitely some really serious agenda.
So let me ask both of you then this question. What do you think? We'll start with you, Rev. What do you think people should be doing to alleviate this situation and maybe change the experience we might be heading into?
The most important thing, and I will say this until I die, is we have to understand that the gods are extraterrestrials. I always will go back to that. It's total control. It's total control across the board. It's all about control. And that's all that it's about. It's all that it's always been about. I mean, there's always bloodletting ceremonies in religion, killing lambs. Even the Catholics drink wine during communion as a symbol of drinking Christ's blood. I mean, really? You're going to drink his blood and eat his body? Isn't that cannibalistic? If you drink blood, doesn't that make you a cannibal?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. This is all done under the guise of religion, worshiping an extraterrestrial. And we will never get out of this low-dimensional muck. We're stuck in this spiritual muck until we break the Yahweh code.
I think that's beautifully said, Rev, and I agree with you 100% because, with the religion that we have, people are just giving their power away. And like you were mentioning before, they don't realize that when they're praying, this energy is getting hijacked and going to Yahweh
Yes.
or whoever it might be, and it's not going to the source that really needs it, which is them. And that's what I've, come to the conclusion of my spiritual, search, that I've come to the same conclusion. It's, once I started understanding giving my energy, I started realizing, well, wait, when I pray, I'm giving away my energy too. I'm giving it to some outside source. And why in the hell would I want to do that when that makes me a victim when I pray to something else? And it makes me a victim and it makes me weak. And so why not I keep that energy? And why not everybody else do the exact same thing and stop praying to a God, but pray to yourself that you have that energy? Go for it.
And
Jump in.
also, you got to get down on your knees. Also, you have to get down on your knee because that's the way God has it. Get down on your knees. You are not as high and mighty as He.
Exactly. Always taking your energy and your power.
Exactly.
Or how about when we pray and meditate, we combine with that universal God consciousness, because without us, there is no universal God consciousness.
And that's the thing. So universal God consciousness. Now, when various different religions, even going back to the Mayans, they were cutting off babies' heads at the top as a sacrifice, or whether you're killing a lamb or a goat or a sheep or whatever, all that kind of stuff, that energy and that sort of dedication is going towards what Reverend John would call, an Anunnaki or an ET or some other being. Like, if you're praising that being, you are giving energy to this terrible being, and they're feeding off of your prayer. Like, that's like food for them. And that gives them more ability to control the masses. Whereas if you actually take your time to separate that, and you pray and you meditate towards the collective consciousness, to the universe, the source of all of this, that is what benefits all of us. But if you're praying towards one alien god or another alien god, you are giving that energy to them, which fuels them to keep us distracted, to keep fueling them. It's just this endless little cycle. It's only when you realize, like John has pretty much made his whole point throughout all of his books and all of his talks. I mean, the bottom line is, we're praying to aliens. And if you're sending that energy to aliens, they're going to use that right back against you and suck you back in. gotta redirect the energy to the real collective universal consciousness that we are all a part of. And that's where it's at right there.
Yeah, that's very well said. Hey, we got a quick question here in the chat room for you, Rev. Is Yahweh a negative energy? How would you answer that?
It's kind of
Okay.
question.
There's a bunch of answers to this. So let's start with the question. How many different ETs were represented as God in the Bible? Yahweh was just one of many, actually. Have you heard of the mercy seat? The Ark of the Covenant had the two cherubim, the angels on top with their wings facing each other, and there was an arc of electricity in between those two. It was called the mercy seat. That was considered God also. You know, people just didn't know. They didn't know and understand. So is Yahweh a negative energy? Yahweh is a very greedy energy that feeds off of us being subservient to him. We pray to him and he gains our prayer energy. And when we die, and everything is based on going to his false afterlife matrix, everything. When you're born, if you're a Christian, you get circumcised. That's religion. I mean, are you kidding me? You get married in a Christian church. Homosexuals are getting married in Christian churches. Okay? I mean, where does your soul go now? And if you're an atheist, if you die, you more than likely have a Christian funeral. So you can't escape it. But the number one thing to know is that it's happening and that it's real, and that we have a sovereign soul, that we have free will. Okay, there's a lot of things in life are not free will. Like us being on this show tonight was not free will. This was determined.
Yeah,
we were.
I was blackmailed. I was forced
chemistry
doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys better be saying that. No.
No, but I believe in things like that. You know, yeah, we're having some free will now, but the fact that we were all on your show on this new platform to begin this new year, you know, we have a sovereign soul. And for me to think that when I pass away, that I have prayed to this alien my whole life, and that's where my soul is going to go, into his false afterlife matrix. Let me tell you a quick story and I'll pass it back to you. 2011 or 12, my dad's brother died. And I go to the funeral, and I'm actually at the wake before the funeral. Everybody's crying, and there's like 300 people there paying their respects. And it was so overwhelming. I had to get away from it and kind of sit at one of the pews. And I wanted to see my uncle in the open casket to see if I could see his soul above the casket, because that's typically where they are when they first pass. Lo and behold, I can see his soul just as clearly as I can see you guys on this triple split screen. Okay. And he's telling me, he's like, I have to tell you something. I have to tell you something. And I'm like, I can't get a clear channel. There's too many people here, too many people crying. I said, wait till I'm by myself and then tell me then. So I wake up in the hotel room the next morning, boom, there's my uncle right over my bed, literally. And he goes, I feel so stupid. And I'm like, why? And he said, because I was praying to aliens my whole life and I didn't even know it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? He's like, no, but my grandparents on my dad's side of the family were there to escort him away from Yahweh's false afterlife matrix. They were there waiting for him, and they were brought up in the church their entire lives also. So my family, I'm not going to say they're the progenitors of breaking the Yahweh code, but that's where I first got the concept of it, is my uncle telling me from beyond the grave that he had been praying to aliens in his whole life, and he felt stupid, and that my grandparents were there to escort him away from that false afterlife matrix. that absolutely blew my mind and changed my whole methodology of thinking for the rest of my life, actually. That my grandparents saved him from getting stuck in that washing machine cycle again.
Man, and let me tell you, folks, if you guys really, somebody mentioned something about this earlier. If you guys really want to go down the Reverend John Polk rabbit hole, first of all, get his first book. Get his first book. Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien. That's his first book. Get that. Right there. See? He's got it. I've got it here.
The pictures don't work, but I brought this to be handy.
No, he's got it. There it is. Yeah, read that. That'll change, and then that's what you do after that. Is you read that book, The Blue Beings, which is first of all, for any dude, there's like 20 plus witnesses to that event. One of which was Travis Walton, although he's very reluctant to talk about it. It's pretty well documented that he was there and that he saw it, and just read those two books. I mean, that will really, if you have any doubts about anything, I mean, that's going to really create a new avenue of curiosity for you that is well documented. And yeah, just check those out. Somebody
and Jimmy Church heard about that story. Jimmy Church heard about that story, and I can remember Eric at Awakening Man. He gets in touch with Rita, who's really, who you need to get in touch with. And I can hear Rita in the background going, oh, he's going to have to wait 6 months. And then I hear Jimmy go, no, I want him on this week. So I don't know who they bumped, but they bumped somebody out to get me on his show. And this was January 27th of 2016. So almost 3 years ago now. And the person that told Jimmy Church about what happened is lying about it to this day. He won't talk about it. It's amazing how many people will not talk about it. There was 150 people there. They all heard about it, every single one of them. I've got about 7 witnesses that will go on record and talk about it. And I would tell you, if I would lie if I said this has not bothered me to the end of my soul, that I can't get all these big people to lend, not me, but lend the story credibility. It just really bugs me.
You know what lends the story credible to me is the one part, just very briefly, where these non-humans come up and they've obviously been given some money because they've been told, like, hey, this is how humans do things, right? And so you have to have this stuff, you have to give it to them. And so they, if you have money, you give it out and you hand it. Let me get in the camera. You hand it like that, right? But no, these people were like, they held it in the palm of their hand, like, is this what you want? Like they didn't know what money was. They didn't know what to do with it. Like they were just stuck in an out of place reality where they were supposed to infiltrate. And that was a part that really that's what really cracked my. In fact, the first ever episode of Shift Happens, John was the guest, and we talked about that story, the whole show.
Yeah.
And I was blasting my vape pen in the microphone the whole episode. But no, seriously, that's a really good. Both the first book is a good foundation, not only for his further work, but also that's just stuff that you need to know. The Yahweh, the biblical God is an alien. You just need to know that. And then just to add, just to go further down a rabbit hole, read the Blue Beings book, man. Like
So, Rev, why don't you talk a little bit about the Blue Being book and what people could be looking forward to inside of this?
Well, I don't want to tell the whole story, but God. So I'm the opening speaker at the Experiencer Speak 4 conference, August 29th of 2015. And Audrey Hewins, who was Travis Walton's girlfriend at the time, she and I were on Jimmy Church's show. And she And it's funny because she had half the story and I had the other half of the story. And I learned a whole lot about the whole story talking with her and Jimmy on Jimmy's show for 2.5 hours. Like a lot of it I didn't, because I hadn't been able to talk to her about it. And I swear there was some kind of alien anesthesia or MK Ultra involved, because I don't want to use an organization's name, but there's this organization out there. We're not one of them, and there must have been 30 or 40 investigators all there. They all knew about it. Not one of them will mention it whatsoever. But I'll tell you what, a bunch of them mentioned it like the first couple days after it happened, just to add to my frustration. But anyway, Audrey and I talked about it at length and went through every nitpicky little detail. And in my book, I transcribed every single word, all the uhs and the ums and every little pause and every little tiny little anything that I could get from that transcript. I put it in the book so you could get the exact script of what was said. But what I did is she wanted me to be the opening speaker of the conference because she knew I would do something spiritual and metaphysical. So what did I do? I conducted a seance. Experiencer Speak is the name of the conference. So guess who's there? 90+% experiencers. So I had everybody hold hands and we prayed and meditated. We did a breathing regimen and a chimney sweep of our chakras and cleared the room, surrounded it with the God light. And we went into basically a seance. And what I've learned is when you want to work with the other side, you don't summon them. You know, for example, Jeff Rennell, I summon you to join me in this congregation. No, if you want to summon something, you're going to summon the dark side. Demons need to be told what to do. You don't ask a demon nicely, oh, Mr. Demon, can you come join us in our loving congregation? It doesn't work like that. If you summon them, you don't know what you're going to get. If you ask permission for them to please join you in a loving congregation. And that's what I did. And then I evoked some Anunnaki, which were the archaliens in the Bible. So Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Enoch. Okay, and I asked them to join us in a loving congregation. And I said, who here has seen ET before? And I rose my hand, and only like 4 or 5 people rose their hand. Well, guess what? Those 4 or 5 people were the key witnesses that will talk about it to this day. And nobody else will really talk about it. There's about 7 or 8 people. And when we were at the UFO Congress, remember UFO Congress, do you remember Lee Hazel, British guy? Remember Lee Hazel, British guy?
Nope.
I don't.
Gigi, you were there. Anyway.
I'm sure I met him. I don't remember people.
Tanglefoot, I think you might remember him. British guy about our height. No, you're taller than me. He's like, I don't know, maybe 5'10". But he was there, and he saw the whole thing. And he would stand up during the experiencer meetings.
I know you're talking about, yeah.
Conducted by Yvonne Smith. He would stand up, and we worked it out. I'm like, hey, dude, will you please talk about this? But how about this? Let's plan it out. I'm going to start talking about it, and if you could just stand up and just interrupt me and just jump in. You know, don't even ask permission. Just jump in and start talking about it. And that's exactly what he did. So when I'm talking about, you know, blue aliens walking into a conference, and I'm looking at people's faces and their nonverbal. I wasn't getting a whole lot of people. But when Lee Hazel stood up and basically reiterated everything I said and vetted me as telling the truth, then all of a sudden everybody's paying total attention to everything that we said. And there was 2 other witnesses in that experiencers meeting, and Lee was very classy. He said, there's 2 other witnesses here, and I know them personally. Neither one of them are going to talk about it, but I'm just letting you know, all these witnesses out there. So it begs the question, why are they not talking? Was MK Ultra involved? Did the ETs blank their memory and give them a screen memory instead? Or did they just blank their minds? Okay. Or were they threatened? I don't know. One thing I know is I have complete and total recall of most of it because they did the alien anesthesia on all of us. So I'm sitting next to one of the blue beings with my phone, and I'm about to be rude and start taking pictures. right? When there's a crowd of people right in front of us. And right when I go to take pictures, I completely freeze and black out. Do you remember Jason Martell at the Alien Snowfest?
Yeah.
Remember Jason Martell? We're in Jimmy's room. We're all hanging out. Da-da-da-da. And Jason Martell and his gorgeous girlfriend, they show up, and we start talking to him. And the first thing I said to Martell was, I was like, you know, I was at this conference, and these aliens showed up, and you look just like one of them. And after...
That's right.
And after I said that, I totally freaked him out, and he really avoided me the rest of the conference period.
He left. Didn't he leave after that?
And the trippy part is that 2 of the 4 had blue skin. The other 2 did not. The other one that did not have blue skin looked just like Jason Martell. He looked just like him, except this guy had big black eyes with no white. You know, you look at somebody's eyes, they have whites in their eyes. This guy had no white in his eyes whatsoever. His eyes were completely and totally black. And right when I was about to take the picture,
Like Jason.
the guy standing next to me, this guy who looked like Jason Martell, he deliberately walks around in front of my table to pull my attention away from the blue beings. And he looks at me. It was too weird, man. He looks at me, and I'm looking in these big, black, dispassionate, void of life kind of eyes. And he goes, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki. Kind of like Rain Man, like he had autism or something. And that, in my mind, triggered the alien anesthesia. And that's when I froze. And so did the cameraman, who's one of the few witnesses that we'll talk about. His name is Ron Sharfy. He froze too. And Ron was on some radio shows with me, and he said, you know what? That whole the Anunnaki thing was a trigger effect for the hypnotic effect. And I'm like, that actually made a lot of sense to me, because that's when everybody was going to start taking pictures, and everybody froze. And then the next thing you know, they're all walking out of the building. And then R. Keith Andrews, who's one of the key witnesses, who's on Dave Scott's radio show the first Friday of every month, R. Keith Andrews, I don't know if you know who he is. He's like the resident alien expert, okay? He was there too, man, and we were all asking these blue beings questions. So there's some of your key witnesses that will talk about it. And the other probably 30 or more witnesses won't. And I understand it. I respect them for not talking about it. Travis Walton, I've been around him plenty of times at conferences, and he deliberately kind of avoids me, and to the point where it's kind of obvious. But I totally respect him. I believe something happened for him to never talk about it in his life. And Jason Quitt, we all know who Jason Quitt is.
Yeah.
Because I talked about this to Jason Quitt on a radio show, and he said that either him or somebody asked him about the blue beings at that conference. And I think it was during one of the Conscious Life Expos in LA. And I'd never heard this before, but Jason Quitt said that Travis said, you know, I did hear about that.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like a week ago, Jimmy had his little thing there at the Rainbow Bar Grill.
I saw the tweets, man. That looked like a great time.
Oh, it was just imagine a conference except without the conference and just the Jimmy's after part. You know, like that's what
I've been to them. Yeah,
I hung out with him quite a bit, and that actually came up in the conversation.
It did. The blue beings.
Very briefly, but
Who brought it up?
Well,
Who
I did. Yeah, I did.
You did.
Yeah.
Well, who'd you say it to? What would you say it to?
No, he was. Just to put it simply, he was on board. Like, he had no doubts.
Jimmy?
No, Jason. You know,
Jason. Yeah.
Jason. Man, that was a great party, though. You guys should have been there. Ron,
It looked like
he showed up. I don't know why. Showed up.
Oh, I saw that. Who invited him, man?
He was crashed. But
So guys, we're at 10 o'clock now, or actually after 10, 10:10. I don't know if you guys want to keep going. I mean, that was the time we were going to call it quits. We can keep going since we brought this up again. It's up to you guys, especially Rev. I know it's kind of late for you, so your call.
One more point I want to bring up, and then
We're going till 11.
well, I'm on the East Coast, man, so I'm 3 hours ahead. 3 hours ahead of you guys.
No,
But-
it was 7 to 10, but
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's all good. But so at Contact in the Desert this past year, we were all there. We all hung out, had a good time, like of course we expected to. And so Eric at Awakening Man, and then Tom Dongo. Okay, we all know who Tom and of course Eric is. We stayed at the Airbnb. We're coming to the conference the next morning. Who do we see sitting on a bench right in front of the conference, right where all the limos and stuff drop people off right there in the front? Grant Cameron. And Grant Cameron was at the conference. And right after the Blue Bings, I heard him go on a show called the Wheatley Time Podcast with Bren and Dave. And it was him and Audrey Hewins and some other witnesses that I can, for the life of me, I cannot get in touch with them to get them to talk about this. But he was on that show, and he acknowledged I didn't see anything, but I was right there, and I heard everybody talking about it. I saw people reacting to it. It was very real. And so I walk up, there's Grant Cameron, and I'm like, Grant, oh my God, do you know how long I've been dying to have a conversation with you about this? We start talking about the Blue Bings in front of Eric and in front of Tom Dongo. It's like, Eric, the one time you don't have Periscope on, Jesus. And I'm like, will you come on my show and talk about this? And he's like, oh, yeah, man, I'll do it. And I have not been able to get him on my show. And when I saw that he was on your show, Gigi, I could have just ripped my hair out of my head. And anyway, I wonder why he would tell me yes in front of Eric, of all people, and Tom Dongo. I mean, he didn't, I mean, we love Eric, but, Eric, if he gets information, he's going to share it with the world if he believes that it's true. And anyway, but he said this in front of Eric and in front of Tom Dongo that, yes, he was there, that it was very real. He saw everybody reacting to everything that happened. I will acknowledge he said he did not see anything, but he knew it was happening. And then it did happen. Wow. And I asked him if he would come on my show and talk about it, and he said yes, he would. And I respect him for not doing it. I just can't put an answer on why he wouldn't do it.
Honestly, I wouldn't blame him personally. I would. Well, here's the first thing to consider, which is I never asked him about that. I just kind of, not to mention, I saw him every year for like 3 years in a row, and every time I just happened to be next to like Jimmy or Rita or somebody, so it kind of looked like I might have been somebody, sort of important. Like, I don't know.
Under the guise. Under the guise of importance.
I was in the right crowd at the right time. All 3 times I saw him, and then after like 3 years, I was finally like, "Hey, man, do you want to come on the show?" He's like, "Yeah, all right." But But here's the thing: is he gave me the same email address that he gave you. I know that for a fact. Which is like, why would he come on my show? I'm just like a little skateboarder kid. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe he, because as far as I know, Grant, I've known him for a while. If he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. So there must be some sort of miscommunication. Like, I don't know. Like, he might have mistyped your email. Like, what did you give him? Your email or your phone number or what? Is there any chance for error? I don't know. Because he's a pretty down-to-earth dude.
He gave me an email, and I never heard back from him.
Did you email him, though?
Oh, absolutely, I did.
Which email did you email him?
I don't know now.
Well, it might not have been the same one that I emailed him.
Well, and I'm not going to use names, but I know people that know him personally that work with him, and I told them that I would be willing to pay Grant thousands of dollars.
No. no, stop right
No,
there.
no, no, no. Hear me out. Hear me out. To do an investigation on the Blue Beings because I need somebody with credibility more than I have to attach their name to it.
But wait a minute. But he wasn't. Grant was not there, was he?
Yeah, he was there during the conference. That's the whole point.
Oh, that changes everything. Okay.
I mean, he was like sitting right next to Travis Walton.
Oh, well, it's
whose
obvious
girlfriend-
now. Well, now it's obvious. That's
Whose
why.
girlfriend talked about the whole thing with me on Jimmy Church's show for 2.5 hours.
No.
And I was
Well,
I was
mean,
telling
yes, but no. No, it's because he knows what you want him to talk about. That's probably why he didn't.
but he agreed to do it. He did. He agreed to do it in front of Eric and Tom.
Course.
He did.
If you ask me in my face, do I want to talk about kickflips down 17 stairs? Yeah, I'll say yeah. But if it comes down to it, no, that's not what I'm doing anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's totally.
I would have told somebody no. I'm just that's the way I am. No, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, but he's he's like a pro, whatever you call it. He's not just going to tell a fan no in their face. He's going to say yeah, and then he's going to be like, nah, beyond the scenes. He's not going to tell you, any. Think about it. Well, actually, I have had a couple people that just straight up said no to my face, but most of the time, that's not the case. Usually, you approach somebody like, "Hey, I got a show. I work for this guy and that guy. Blah blah blah. You're friends with him. Do you want to come on my show?" They're like, "Yeah," and then you email them, and then all of a sudden, they don't give a shit. I'm sorry, they don't give a shift. Is what I meant to say.
Well, I remember when I interviewed Travis Walton, I talked to his mass media marketing manager, Jennifer Stein, and she was there at the conference also, and she knew all about it also. And I said, you know what? I'd love to talk about this with Travis on my show, and I have a feeling that would probably be the worst thing I could possibly do, and she agreed with me completely. So Jennifer Stein and we both agreed we don't need to even bring it up. We'll probably just tick him off and probably get him ticked off at you. So there's no point in even bringing it up. Therefore, we did not. At James Gilland, when he was on my show, I'm like, James, do you know how many people have talked just total smack about me with getting abducted by the reptilians in Sedona? Can you please vet me on my show? And I was talking to his marketing team before he went on the show with me, and he gives me a call and says, yeah, man, it was real. I was there. It was completely real. Yes, I will talk about it on your show. And I was like, well, thank God. So that was an actual example of somebody talking about something that is not easily palatable. Most people would have a hard time believing something like that. That's why I wanted to have a talk with him before he even came on my show. And we did. And he's like, it was real. I mean, we're not lying about anything. So yes, of course, I'll be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, but I think with Travis, because he already had one hell of a time with his first.
He had death threats. He had death threats back in the 70s.
But also the fact that he signed on to do that movie or a documentary, whatever you want to call it, and he will tell you to this day, like, that is not what happened. Like, that is an inaccurate representation of what happened to him.
Oh, fire in the sky.
At the way that turned out. And so when he is rebounding from that, and then you're coming up to him or me or whoever, like, hey, do you want to talk about the Blue Beings? Like, no, I already got taught shift to about all the stuff that happened to me. Much less am I going to talk about something else. You know what I mean? Like, it's not surprising to me that he doesn't want anything to do with it, but the fact that he downright, right from the get-go, wants nothing to do with it is pretty obvious to me, especially when you have you and multiple other witnesses that all can testify that he was there and that he did see that. So when you put that all into perspective, he's just, he's already been personally, personality assassinated. He's already done that one time. He doesn't want to do that again. You know what I mean? I totally get that. I totally understand that. But the fact that he has denied his participation in, you and whoever else's sides of this story is that's just as obvious to me that, he was there. Rather, like the fact that he's trying so hard to not be involved with it when so many credible sources of that event know that he was there. I think that speaks for itself, to say the least.
No, I'll never be satisfied, but
Well, I'm sure you. But I think I get it. I think I get it. I don't know if you get it. I get it.
no, I'll never get it.
I don't.
I don't want to. No, I mean, I understand why Travis wouldn't.
Right? Yeah, he can't. He can't. He can't risk that at this point. What is he, like 117 years old? He can't. He's only got so much longer. He barely just got back from the whole misdocumented documentary thing that he's been fighting his whole career for the last 15 years. And the last thing he wants to do is latch his name onto something that he doesn't have full control over.
So here's a good question. His girlfriend, Audrey, at the time, what kind of conversations did they have after she went on Jimmy Church's show with me talking about it? I don't know.
All of the conversations that he would never have on a radio show. That's probably.
Yeah, but I will reiterate once again. I respect everybody that doesn't want to talk about it. I get it. I do. It's just incredibly frustrating where the keys of disclosure are right there, and nobody wants to try and crank the engine over. So
especially for you, because
imagine when people said I'm a liar or I'm some weirdo making this stuff up to sell my books. That's where it really burns, when you have all of the witnesses that it takes to vet yourself indefinitely. But it's all good. So on that note, gentlemen, I'm going to bid you farewell. So Jeff, thank you so much for having me on your show.
You're welcome. Thanks for being part of the show. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about your radio show, what time it's on and everything, where people can get a hold of you, where they can find your books, and all that good stuff.
All right. Reverend John Polk on Facebook. Please follow me at Marcus Polk, not John Polk. On Twitter at Reverend Polk. And then my show is Quantum Hologram Matrix on thefringe.fm, which is every Tuesday, 8 to 10 Eastern Time. Pardon me. And then at QH Matrix is my Twitter handle. At QH Matrix, at Reverend Polk, Marcus Polk on Facebook. And if anybody wants to email me, you can email me at jpolk2 at CFL, like Central Florida, .rr.com. My two books, The Blue Beings Visitation at the UFO Conference and Yahweh the Biblical God is an Alien, are both available on johnpolkmedia.com. That's johnpolkmedia.com.
All right, awesome. Thank you, John. I can't tell you how blessed I am and how honored I am to have you on today, John. You're a wonderful man. I had a lot of fun ever since I've got to know you. A lot of great journeys and stuff, but very blessed to have you come on here and talk about all your great experiences and your knowledge here. Gigi, the same as well, man. What a wonderful man you are. Great. You guys are both wonderful hosts too. I listen to both your guys' show all the time. If you guys can catch it on the Fringe FM, both of these guys' show. Gigi had me on twice in the last month. It's been, and so got lucky, and he had me on as a co-host to be able to interview with Laura Eisenhower, and that was definitely a privilege as well. So why don't you tell a little bit about your show and where people can catch your show and who you got on again tomorrow night?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, first of all, I do want to say in John's name, listen, folks, get his book, The Blue Beings. Read that. Trust me, there's a lot of truth there, and there's a lot of witnesses. There you go, just holding it up, and there's so much I could say about that. I don't want to hold up too much time, but yes, the first book, Yahweh, the Biblical God is an Alien. That's a must read. And yeah, just get there while you can. Status. Jeff, thank you once again for joining me a couple weeks ago for Lauren Eisenhower. And
My pleasure.
yeah, it's a great interview. And it looks like there might be some more guest co-host spots open in the future, so you'll definitely be on the list. But yeah, our show is every Friday from 7 to 9 Pacific right here on the Fringe FM. Well, not right here, right there on the Fringe FM. And at shifthappenspodcast.com. You can get there, get the chat room there. And yeah, it's good to be here. John's a good friend of mine, so is Jeff. And always a great conversation between you two, the three of us, however you want to put it. And yeah, definitely keep checking out Jeff because I know he's got a lot more stuff coming out here on ETalk.TV. It's just getting started. Buckle up, folks. Listen, folks. You're gonna walk on ice. Might as well dance. You know what I'm saying? What are you wasting my time? Come on. ETalk.TV. Come on. All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The inner Joey Diaz came out of me right there.
That's perfect. And you're so right. This is just getting started. We had a bunch of technical difficulties just trying to get this show off. So I can't say how honored I am to have John be patient with me on all of these technical difficulties that we had getting going. But he stuck through it, and so did I, and so did Gigi, and so did all of you guys. So I definitely want to thank all of my listening audience for tuning in. We will be back next month. We are going to do this every Thursday, the first Thursday of every month. We're going to go live. I was hoping to do 3 hours straight. We might have to do 2 hours and then an added hour. I'll have to play with this program some more, but we have definitely a lot more features that we're going to do on this show. My co-host, Scott Karamanis, hopefully he'll be back next month as well, too. And, hey, man, I wish everybody a blessed 2019. May it be as beautiful as everybody is out there and all of the souls of the life, man. Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend John Polk again. Thank you, Gigi. Till the next time, guys. And hey, you guys are always welcome to get on the chat room, and we can bring you in as well, too, at any time. So thank you.
All right. Cheers to that.
All right. Peace, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you to listening to E-Talks. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.